That's fine.
So you pull back. What happens is where you really.
That could be, could be.
Yeah, it's not. So it has not self.
Specific things. So what else?
Oh, thank you so. Yeah. And then. Yeah, we are talking about the difference writing first. Somewhere I had what people buried.
I feel like I just give them a face.
All right, so hopefully, the name tags have gone around, if they don't have the name tag.
Also, there's a handout up front you should have, and also please check your date from, that you're here.
For the main.
You've attended.
Yeah.
That's up there.
And, you should check there. Also, there's a copy of the handout we'll be using this, first part.
It's the main. Oh, it's the treaties, that's right. Yeah. Yeah.
All right, well, I think we're gonna go ahead and get started. Thanks, a number of you were here half an hour early. I thought that was a great time. This, I think, is gonna be a really powerful meeting. I know it's been difficult at times, feel like we're getting our traction. We're just coming off 3 incredibly thoughtful community meetings last night and this morning that are really helpful kind of segues into the conversations we're gonna have tonight. Thanks for those of you on the DST that were part of those. Some of you are doing 2 and 3 meetings a day, certainly appreciate that. And as I said, I think this is gonna be kind of an action-packed a meeting for us. So just high level overview, we're gonna spend a little time up front. We heard the feedback from the last time, like, what's our charge again? Where are we going? How's all this fitting together? So we heard that and wanted to take some time just to re-ground us in your charge and where we are in this process. Kind of pull back some of the scenes from previous episodes a little bit. And then we'll spend the first half of the meeting really kind of absorbing a lot of the material we sent out in advance and that you had a chance to look at. Sorry for the broken link on that, but hopefully you had a chance to get through it. You'll also be able to dive into it today. But what it did in the June meetings was pretty pivotal for community members to have the conversation about what are the possible strategies going forward and whether Brown Ranch needs to be amongst those. And you'll have that chance to review those conversations. Second half then, and I know this is always a chicken and the egg. Well, how can I say yes to Brown Ranch if I don't know what's going to be? Well, how do you know if we're going to figure out the details if we don't say yes to it? So there's that. This is the two-part dance meeting where the first part is yes to Brown Ranch and then how to Brown Ranch. That's the kind of combination of what would it take to make it viable. And then as promised, we'll do kind of just a temperature check this time. We've been talking about this kind of off ramp into phase 2 or not. If we need it, we'll do a temperature check to see how you're thinking about that and what we need to prepare for August. So we'll get that done. And so agenda, that is what I just said, kind of combination of this. All right, so high level overview. This is the story we've been talking about with the community in the last few days. So just wanted to review with you. When you think about these kinds of processes, the basic architecture of it is what's the community's desired future? What's their current reality? What are their existing remedies to get there? How's that going? What's the likely trend? Do they like that trend? If not, what are the opportunities? And then what is it going to take to get to that desired future? That's the basic storyline of any process like this. So just to kind of bring into the room what we now know that we didn't know when we started, these are, in my mind, the 3 most powerful slides from the 170-page report of the housing demand. And really an important story of how different the last 5 years are in Steamboat than the 30 or 40 years before. If you look at the comparison of sales of homes in the last between 2019, which is the darker line, and 2024, which is the yellow, you can see in 2019, if you were in the workforce looking for a house at those income levels below $500,000, $600,000, you had lots on the market to choose from. In 2024, the vast majority of the homes move into that upper $1 billion range, which is simply out of reach, and that's what's explaining a lot of the mismatch of the market and the experience of what's living in the housing market. The other way to describe that is the mismatch between actual income levels in Steamboat and housing opportunities. The brown is the households at different income levels. Blue is so you don't need to know this anymore. You already know this. There's a huge mismatch in the market between housing and what's needed. So what wasn't as clear in a lot of conversations about it, though, is what's the human story behind those numbers? And so when you think about the level of housing insecurity for the renters in Routt County compared to homeowners, it's about 6 times as intense a feeling of insecurity. And if we were going to put that on the kind of pain scale that a doctor uses when you go into the doctor's office, folks that live in single family homes that have home ownership, their pain level of affordable housing is in the minimal, mild, and uncomfortable range. Folks that are experiencing high levels of insecurity is in the distressing, unimaginable, and intense range. In the stories we've been hearing from communities, there are 3, 4, 5 people doubled up into rooms, $1,600 for an apartment that doesn't have a kitchen. Folks that have lived here 8 years who have moved 10 times, every time more expensive, every time fewer amenities. It goes on and on. Talk to the employers, have great teachers they want to hire, there's no housing, they lose the healthcare system, same thing. Those problems are exacerbating, and people are living with intense sense of distress. Thanks, Matt. And so there's a human story behind the numbers too, that we want to make sure we're continuing to bring into the room. So if we go back to that basic architecture of a community process, one thing that's really clear, and this is not always the case in communities, to be honest, you are laser focused on the same future. People love Steamboat for very similar reasons. And Clark's going to go into a little bit more about this. They love the authenticity of the town, the feeling of the community. It's a real town. It's not just a resort. Lots of agreement on that. The current reality is now becoming clear. Over the next 10 years, according to that housing demand study, you probably need a little over 2,000 units to catch up and about 1,100, 1,200 units to keep up. We disagree about the exact numbers, but the demand is significant. The current reality is pretty clear. The existing remedies, and this is what we'll go into tonight, how is it that you're trying to achieve your affordable housing needs? Primarily through infill and using the surrounding communities as the place people are finding housing. How's that trend going? Is that working to get us where we want to go? No. See previous slides. If that trend continues, you won't be that future that you desire. So we have this opportunity in Steamboat that not many communities do, a large plot of land that's been donated that help drop the cost. Is that something the community wants to do? And if so, how? That's the basic notion of trying to get you to your future. So the last slide on the process is there's been a lot of conversation about how could we ever do this? What's the, as if that was a technical question. There's another answer to how communities solve impossible problems. They typically start out with individual actors trying to define the problem differently, take action, kind of working in scattered attempts, which you might have experienced that. I was thinking about this when we had on the housing demand meeting. There was a little example of this, just what's the conversation we're in? What's the central thread? It's defined in different ways by different people. Totally understandable. That usually leaves you less than the sum of your parts. You can then kind of align your efforts. At least we're heading in the same direction. You might not yet agree on the total strategies, but we're heading in the right direction. By the way, this is something where I think we're going to try to get to tonight. Big step forward, but it still means you're doing individual work. You're still not yet in total alliance. If we can figure out a way for this community to really rally together and say, we know the future we want, we're willing to figure these conversations out together, and we can mobilize. I'm not a cyclist, but I'm told that when you ride in formation, you have efficiencies and kind of speed and potential that not everybody has to work as hard in that group. You're working together, you're getting leverage, and you become more than the sum of your parts. And that's really what phase 1 and phase 2 of this process are designed to do. Give people a chance to talk about it, align towards common goals, and figure out where you can become more than the sum of your parts. So that kind of is the high level process. And Clark's going to walk us through the kind of, all right, but what have we learned from this process internally? So I'll pass it to you, Clark.
How's everybody doing? Good, see you guys. Try to move through this quickly, but also it's helpful even for us, I think, when we were trying to prepare for the next meeting after we were with you guys last time, just thinking about the progress we've made and where are the points where we still have work to do, and some areas where we need to do some more learning, and where have we actually gained some ground in terms of understanding and direction. And then, of course, we really heard a lot of feedback from you guys in terms of trying to figure out how we can make sure that the process that we're doing together gets us to where we're trying to go in terms of finding, both shared understanding of all of these very complex issues and how they fit together, and also shared direction towards strategies. And it's been very interesting for us because we have this experience of hearing from a lot of you guys in between the meetings and really some great conversations and emails. One of the things I think we've learned, and Bill talks about this, is that we're all coming at this from different places, different levels of understanding, and with different interests. And so there's a group of people who really wants us to dig deeper and get more technical and into the weeds, and move faster. And there's people who want us to slow down, or really we need to get clear on the big picture. So I think that is helpful sort of beginning to thinking about how we've been doing the work. You guys are familiar with this. It's just important the only thing I want to point out here is that the work that you guys are doing is also supported by community engagement that we've been doing. And then we're also working with a team of the city and YVHA staff and officials through the project collaboration team. And those three pieces together are really driving this work forward. But you all in the middle are really been asked to take input from all these sides and try to help us find direction as we go forward. Just to remind everybody, we use this sort of framework for understanding how group processes work at the very beginning. And when you enter into a group process in the early stages, it's really important that we are able to move through an exploratory phase because different people have different perspectives and different opinions, and we gain a lot of understanding in an exploratory phase space where our ideas are divergent, but we're getting out there. And there's a middle of this, because as things diverge and get wider and bigger, it could get a little frustrating, because you're like, where are we going? Are we making any progress? And that's called the ground zone. And then there's a shift as we start to converge and bring things back together. And we're probably in the middle of that ground zone right now. So that shape, we've intentionally designed that into our process framework, where in this first half, the phase one, we're really trying to build towards shared understanding and direction. And again, recognizing that we're all coming at this from different places and different levels of understanding and different interests. A lot of that's about just understanding the fundamentals of the needs, the opportunities, the trade-offs, and then moving towards a place where once we've got as much of a basis and a foundation of shared understanding around those things, we're in a much better position to gain agreement on more specific strategies and solutions. So I'm gonna bounce through these parts pretty quickly and just remind everybody here again how we've had different community engagement efforts feeding into some of our meetings to date. So let's look back at some of the things we've done, and we'll try to do this pretty quickly. You know, we began way back in the early days. At our orientation meeting, we had a really fascinating conversation about what mattered to us, what you guys love most about the community, and also your hopes and fears. And then in that same meeting, we worked on some agreements on how we're going to work together. And through that, you guys really called out many different things, but I'm going to highlight a couple of them here. Respectful, open-minded dialogue. And so just really thinking like, we're going to have to be open-minded, we're going to have to be willing to learn, we're going to have to be willing to listen. A lot of you guys in that first round of comments there was about being willing to learn and listen to other people. A commitment to shared understanding and learning, that we're in this together, that we all have things to learn, we all bring experience and expertise to this, but none of us has the whole picture and none of us has all the information. So we really have to do it together. To build trust and team culture together, recognizing that we're working on an issue that is, you know, it's controversial. It should be. This stuff really matters. Like, these are the types of things that should be controversial, but that we want to begin building back trust, especially to the degree that there was sort of divides between these perspectives. Let's try to see if we can get to a place where we're trusting each other, also trusting the process, and a culture of kind of really working as a team instead of individuals. Speaks a lot to what Bill was just talking about. And people spoke a lot about how the process itself needs to be clear and accountable, and that's something that we've been working on, making sure we try to improve, and we'll continue to get your feedback today moving forward. I mentioned you guys helped identify shared values, and this was important because it just gives us something to ground ourselves in, and you know why this work really matters. You guys talked about really loving sense of community here, that this town is welcoming, the connections and relationships you have really matter, that it's a friendly place, and that's something that really is a big part of what people love most about this place. And not only is there sort of that relational connection aspect, but the character of the town still feels like a real place. And it's not like other ski towns that way. The access to nature and recreation in terms of, you know, for a lot of different reasons, something that all of you spoke of as being very important, and fundamentally the people, the relationships and diversity within and of our community. Finally, the opportunity to engage was another key theme that came out. So the ability to participate in civic and cultural life as a member of the community. We also talked about your fears and concerns, and we talked about the concern that we're losing our identity. We are actually becoming one of those other resort towns like Vail or Aspen or Telluride. That because of our affordable housing challenges and our cost of living challenges, people are being pushed out, and that's changing our character. Talked about how and the character of our community isn't only the sort of bricks and mortar version of community character, but it's the characters. And so that's something that people were really concerned about. And specifically, people talked about the displacement of the locals, senior and youth as the community changes. And the concerns about just unplanned or poorly managed growth and its impacts on the community, the environment, community character, the economy, and finally, the division and inequality, and you know, not specific to this topic, but just as the community goes through change, that it can feel more divided, that we can feel at odds with each other, and that there's this sort of sense of economic separation in the community that is a division that we experienced. We hoped, or we ended on a more optimistic note that day and talked about our hopes for the future. Not surprisingly, a lot of you spoke about the the aspiration for more affordable and attainable housing to keep the community more the way it is. That growth could be more sustainable, that it can be smart and sustain Steamboat's character. That you can ultimately be a community that's inclusive and resilient, and that we can support the local economy, and that there's opportunities for the next generation. So you guys covered a lot in that first meeting. I promise we're not going to go meeting for meeting, but that sort of those foundational pieces were really important. We went into a sort of phase then over the next couple meetings where a lot of what we were trying to do was sort of understand the context, the situational sort of setting we were working in, and some of the current realities, as well as the needs that we're trying to solve for. One of the key points that we sort of worked on and developed out of those first two meetings, this idea that Brown Ranch is really one piece of a larger puzzle. As an example, there's this regional jobs housing imbalance that basically means there's more jobs here than there is housing, and that means a lot of our housing is other places. And that's really driving a lot of our traffic and transportation issues. And that's fundamentally part of your reality. It feeds into not just Brown Ranch, but your whole community of Steamboat Springs and really Rapp County. And that's important because we have to understand that our traffic challenges are not just related to Brown Ranch, but have to be something that's dealt with. Same thing as we think about the cost of current and future service and infrastructure and amenity needs. Whereas a community that's growing and has kind of reached a point where one of the things we learned from city staff is, we're getting to a point where on some areas, it's not just a small shift, but we're gonna have to sort of move up a level in terms of some of the services and our provision of infrastructure and things like that. So those are questions and needs that are gonna exist really regardless of what happens with Brown Ranch, although obviously Brown Ranch can play an important role in that. And also that there are choices and trade-offs when we think about where we can build housing. Or what Bill referenced in terms of the scenarios that we looked at with the community, and that, that they're not really inseparable choices. Really, you have the choice to do many at the same time. But to make it easy, we could look at, infill as a solution, Brown Ranch as a solution, and the solution of essentially not doing anything, which means we're going to allow, housing to just occur in nearby communities and essentially transform them into bedroom. And then there are choices and trade-offs. Each of those have pros and cons that we should look at and understand and scrutinize. But fundamentally, this is about balancing priorities was another thing that we really took away from the first couple of meetings. We landed on this sort of three-part balance of affordability, feasibility, and place. The Brown Ranch really needs to enable meaningful progress in improving affordability. That's its core need. That's why we're interested in it as a community. But it must be technically and financially feasible to implement. So we can't get to that affordability benefit if it's not feasible. And it's got to create a quality place or places, depending on how we look at it, that our community can really enjoy and be proud of. We talked about and learned a lot about how our housing market is changing. And one of the takeaways, I think, is that it's changing our community. We got a lot from Brian from Economic Planning Systems in his presentation. I'm not going to try to go through all of that, but one of the things that was really important from it is just that it's getting more expensive and more unaffordable, and that your housing needs are both broad and deep. Broad meaning like it's far reaching, a lot of different income levels are sort of subsumed in this, and deep meaning some of the challenges really quite significant in terms of how bad people's needs are. And that dynamic is changing our community and economy. You guys are getting older and you're getting wealthier, and your community is changing as the demographic and socioeconomic structure of this place is affected by these housing market dynamics. We spent time too beginning to think about opportunities and constraints. We talked about site conditions and the soil conditions and how those geotechnical dynamics do create very real cost challenges and complexities that will make it harder to build affordable housing. And we also talked about and learned that while that is true, it is also true that it's not entirely uncommon around here. Those site dynamics and conditions are certainly somewhat common. And also we learned that while it will be more expensive, there is still a pathway forward, at least according to the group that we talked to as a part of the soil study, to building something that's feasible. We spent time learning from other communities. We talked, I'm not going to go through all of that. JJ provided a really nice breakdown of some cool case studies of relevant projects and some of the things that really stuck out from that is the importance of having a variety of housing types and price points. And we also talked about the importance of weaving into the project critical pieces of placemaking like streets and sidewalks and trails and open space, how important that was. Each of those projects had a dynamic where the community was growing and they strategically tried to figure out, how can we locate housing that we need in places where it makes the most sense. And each of them also talked about the opportunity to weave in market rate for both the opportunities for people living there in the neighborhoods and also to help offset costs and to create a sense of mixed neighborhoods. And each of them used a variety of creative financing and operating models, which we didn't go into depth on, but did get a chance to learn more about those things in the affordability financing inquiry meeting for those who were there. And we began developing initial principles for Brown Ranch, which I won't go through all of those now, but we're beginning to refine those so that we can have another follow-up conversation with you all about them. And we'll bring those together, I think, in a way that really lets us see what have we painted a picture of right now in terms of the principles and strategies that we've heard from you all, as well as from the community that informed this work. And we did that by affordability, feasibility in place, once again, using that framework. From there, when we think about sort of where we're transitioning to, this is a non-exhaustive list, but actually before we do that, that's sort of a bit of what we've covered. Doesn't include everything, doesn't include, for example, some of our most recent inquiry team meetings in terms of breaking them down. We just wanted to be efficient in terms of covering what we've gone through. What in here? Did I miss anything? Misstate anything? Does that feel like a journey you guys were on, or you're like, I don't remember being there?
It does.
Yeah. Is it interesting to kind of see it folded back like that? Does it take a little bit of the complexity out? Just, I know there was a lot of complexity, but it can sometimes be helpful to be like, all right, let's just rewind real quick and watch this on slow-mo. Okay. Hopefully that's helpful. We welcome any feedback too on aspects of this that you think are missing in terms of things that we have learned that aren't captured here. Just really quick too, I'm curious, how many of you have gotten a chance to be at least one inquiry team meeting? Very impressive. Okay, that's great. So as we transition into phase two, there is more to it than this, but this feels like plenty. So we want to share back to you some of the things we've heard, and also some of the things that we know are going to be important to cover as we get into the next stage of this process, should we decide that it makes sense to continue to do so. And again, when we think about that decision, I think it's important to think of it as really like, it's, if there's a reason to stop, if there's a real fundamental question to feasibility and viability, then we really need to have a conversation about that. Or if the process itself needs to be rethought, we need to have a conversation about that. But it's really an off-ramp, not a roadblock. Scale and phasing. So this is something that we've already gotten actually some pretty good feedback on some of you on. I'm not going to kind of go through that now, but we've gotten both from you all and community members some good starting points in terms of how much, how quickly, and in kind of what increments can we think about scale and phasing. We've gotten a lot of guidance from you all on housing types and diversity. A lot of the principles that you guys developed got at the idea of really want to create mixed income neighborhoods, places where we have a variety of different housing types and housing types that feel like they really fit our community. Relatedly, and we talked about this as a starting point in the affordable housing financing inquiry team, but what are the different things we can do to create affordability, hopefully in different ways, so for rental and for ownership, and hopefully even some different models that fit Steamboat, so we can meet so many different needs that we have. Cost and financing. So, really understanding as we gain a better sense of the scale of what we're talking about, what are the costs of horizontal and vertical development going to look like? I want to repeat something we talked about earlier, like our ability to get very fine grained detail on that is, limited to having a plan. But I think we can get some good information on. Yes.
Horizontal and vertical physically, like growing out versus growing?
So horizontal, sorry, that's a kind of a wonky term. Horizontal development in sort of housing stuff is like the infrastructure, utilities, the streets, the sort of stuff that you need to put in place first. And then once that stuff is there, you can go vertical and vertical development. So it's sometimes thought of in those two sort of stages. That makes sense. So you want to really look at both of them, and they have different sort of sets of funding, financing, and so yeah. Design programming, and design is really the reference to physical place and feel, and you know, how do we think about neighborhoods and layout? And our job won't be to do the design, but to hopefully help bring principles from what we've learned in the community to inform that, so that YBHA, when should they decide to take what we're, you know, working from here and deploy it in an updated plan, then they have that feedback to inform design. And then hopefully that can be an iterative thing where then we get a chance to sort of give some feedback to what's coming out. Does that feel about right, Emily? Cool. And then programming being more sort of the development program, which is another kind of wonky term, but essentially means sort of the mix of different unit types, development types, that make up your overall development, so that you can, from that, get a sense of, you know, what are we building and how much is it going to cost. And finally, our hope is to be able to bring some really cool tools that allow us to sort of do some scenario planning that meets pro forma modeling, where we can look at some different ways that we could accomplish some of these things with an eye for feasibility. So we can actually be looking at a pretty dynamic pro forma that says, well, if we do this on the affordability sort of knob, what happens to feasibility? Or if we do this on the place knob, so maybe we, you know, add some amenities or some features, how does that affect affordability and feasibility? And understand the relationship between those in a pretty specific way. What else? Is there anything else that I missed in terms of things that we're really going to need to get into to make phase 2 work? I'm sure there's more. You don't have to have all the answers now. Quiet bunches up.
Put them in a classroom setup, but everybody just wants to do it.
Okay.
I guess what's rattling around my head is, where was the thought process around, you know, we need more land to develop on. How did ground rent become the right location? In other words, the city needs to annex some more ground. There's lots of ground around town.
Brown ranch.
Why ground rent? That's the one I haven't.
Yeah, I think I'll invite somebody from the housing authority to answer, but I'll share first my understanding to test the.
It was donated land, that's when he came in.
They were looking at Brown Ranch to be before this, if they put up the 24 million.
Yeah, but.
Yeah, I would
that's
like to
now-
know why Brown Ranch too, because we really. Yeah, the whole part that's gonna be the main thing is the infrastructure, which is what the city is gonna have to pay for. And that's not, it hasn't even been approached yet, any meaning, you know.
Well, we got into it in the finances. Yeah, getting into it deeper is gonna be important. You're right. Lauren?
And you're right, but I'll jump in too, but it's also, Brad, someone. Can answer this better than I could, but it's been in our future land use maps, built less generally, we're also updating that in, city and county planning update of community plan. Right. All of that's been closed into building in that westward direction, constantly looking for community updates on building west versus areas south.
Right, and I'm just on board with West,
But that has been identified in future land use map. Okay.
but that specific parcel.
Well,
It
that's
seems like
the area
before
in
the
majority
joint
west of towns would be the first one next over, but there are several properties to that west, but it's definitely been identified.
Yeah.
Why west and not south? Why?
Well, here's,
You could
Yeah,
argue
let's
about
make sure the question being here, so the question, you're sort of saying why here, not there.
Yeah.
And you said,
When the development was, I
that. It's a good conversation.
There's a $24 million restricted cash donation for the purpose of buying ground range, so the stoner or of the money.
Yeah.
Is the one who directed to ground range.
yeah,
Then they
so.
But Ground Ranch was already being discussed.
It was already being developed. There was 2 other developers that have been here
And Jim, okay, go ahead, Richard, and then I'm gonna go to Jim, because he's had his hand up.
I was part of city council and I know all this stuff really well. Let me give you a brief, I will try and be brief historical perspective here. 1995, this community created its very first long-term plan for what we wanted to look like in the future. It was filled with language about maintaining community character, what Steamboat Springs was, how we valued it, and how we wanted that to go forward. There was one little piece of that, and by the way, that was adopted in this room by city council, county commissioners, and the planning commissions from both bodies unanimously. It was a very dramatic moment after 2 years of work on this, starting in people's neighborhoods and going through a slew of hundreds
Was
of
that the
meetings.
Orts Foundation?
Orton Foundation got involved at some point. They were
Okay.
not in at the beginning.
Okay.
There was one little piece of that that said, if and when the city of Steamboat Springs fills up to the point that in order to accommodate growth, we need to expand, then we need to do that to the west. Why? Because the south was seen as sacrosanct. We were preserving land down there. It was valued for its agricultural heritage, for the aesthetic value of it. To the north, you had private property. To the east, you had the Forest Service and the ski area. The obvious, unquestionable direction that this city had to grow was west. As I said, there was a short sentence in this plan that said, we need to develop a plan for that growth when it comes in the future. And for whatever reason, in 1995 and 96, we started on that right away. And I was on the committee that met with the city and the county and forged this plan 2 years in the making. West of Steamboat Springs Area Community Plan. It outlined the boundary of this land. It was north of the highway, and it followed features, geographic features. That's the quick, short history of how we ended up looking at the land we have. Those folks who argue in favor of the Brown Ranch are quick to point out, this goes back to 1997. We've known all along this is where we're going. And now we're poo-pooing it for the third time. Presumably you've heard those arguments, and it's far more complicated than just that, of course. But that's the brief history.
Great story, thank you, that's really helpful. I think you were next, and then there, just two.
Oh, I just, the aesthetics of being on top of Mount Warner and looking out to the south, very important to tourists, to the community, to planning in the past. And it's also a lot of conservation easements, if I'm correct, so
Laura?
they cannot be.
There
developed.
are easements to the west
So
as
far.
well.
Yeah,
Excuse me.
I mean, I know there are a lot of them around the county.
Okay, it was poo-pooed twice. The second one was Spring Gray. And Spring Gray was adopted. I mean, it was okay to do. I might have the right language, but that deal fell through because the sellers bundled it up. And so in reality, that Spring Gray one was
That was the Steamboat 700.
approved.
No,
Oh, different.
that was after that. Steamboat
Okay.
700 was 2,000 units, Bring Gray was 400.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. Okay.
We didn't put through
Good,
that.
so good conversation here about sort of how we got here and why Brown Ranch. My understanding on the question of like, which came first, the interest in Brown Ranch or the donation was that, there was, Brown Ranch had been identified. If you're working on housing and looking at, where can we try to solve these problems? It was one of the places where you could say, you could do a lot there. But I don't think anybody's ever expecting to get a large donation to be able to do that. So, it's probably a little bit of both and on that front. Any other sort of points of, things that are gonna be really important for us to, and by the way, that question of location is really the substance of your homework for today. So those of you who got to read that, hopefully that'll feel familiar. We're really asking that question, sort of why Brown Ranch instead of infill? Why not bedroom communities? So we'll dig more into that. Should I hand off?
Yeah.
I was just gonna say one thing that feels missing is just. It feels like it's getting ahead of this, but in a way, I don't think we can get to this without talking about ensuring that the property is managed well, that, you know, it's a fair process of how people get in there, the place is taken care of, the transparent process. all of it.
Operations management, really,
Yeah.
yeah, long-term management and operations. And that is actually another thing that people have talked about is sort of what's the nature of the development partnership and, you know, the looking at different models for what role and roles can be there in terms of looking at housing authority, city, maybe county, and then, you know, whatever version of development partner. So that's another thing that has come up, yeah.
I keep going back to the conversation about transportation, down valley. And how that has happened in the Roaring Fork Valley, and the Eagle Valley. And I don't know if what's on the slide, encompasses that, but I guess for me as a commuter, as someone who lives in West Route, I don't see the key issues of Brown Ranch being resolved without transportation going along, right along with it at the same pace of its development.
Yes.
Happy to take this offline. I missed the last meeting. Has there been a breakdown looking at the housing types and affordability and the financing of what percentage of the target audience in whatever in the community would fall into what tier of housing? You know, some of the development we've done, for example, the one over by Ace, there was big uproar a couple of years ago because the price of those were too much. But the target of that development was for a band of income relative to poverty. So, or poverty line. So it was targeting those people, but there was a huge uproar about, well, that's not meeting our affordable housing because I only make 20% of the poverty and I can't afford it. So do we have a breakdown of what percentages of the community fit in 150, 100, 75, whatever the tiers are to address those housing types and densities?
Your new housing market and demand study looks at that in terms of different levels of need across different income levels, which is really helpful. And as it happens, tomorrow's community meeting that we're having is really oriented around that question of like Brown Ranch for who? So we're asking the community to one, grapple with the data. So we're gonna start by going through the data of what does the needs and market studies show. And then we're gonna talk about, okay, well, here's these different, you know, experiences essentially that people are having, you know, and part of the question is getting, I think, at exactly what you're saying, which is like, we really have a broad range of needs. And so how do we really think about meeting all of them? And just so having one of the things you can see in that study is, what was it, JP? Somebody making 200% of area median income, so doing pretty well. Still has a pretty sizable gap in terms of what they can get into here. I think they need, in addition to what they can afford, like they would need
Over $700,000.
a $700,000 gap to fit. So significant. So it's a deep. I'm gonna hand it back to you. We will be able to, you know, we'll have opportunities to add to this list, but I think those points that you come up were very good.
All right, so thank you for gathering around for story time part of the meeting. Just to kind of retrace our steps. We're not gonna dive into your conversation time. And the way we'll frame this is, as you know from the reading that homework, the last public engagement when we were here in June, it was really looking at a fairly high level of the three broad strategies of meeting the affordable housing needs: infill, having it absorbed into surrounding communities and Brown Ranch. What are the cost and benefits of each? And really, at the end of the day, it's like, what's the takeaway? For the community's sense, it was overwhelmingly all of the above. We didn't ask them about a specific type of development at Brown Ranch, so that could be 1 unit, 100 units, 1,000 units, but should Brown Ranch be part of your solution? And that's what we're gonna ask you to really dive into and take a look at. So your chart, we're gonna in a moment kind of divide up into 3 smaller discussions. And we just want you to kind of go back over the notes from those community conversations. Is there anything that they missed? Is this a pretty good summary of the trade-offs, pros and cons? And then we're gonna, you know, come back together and say, you know, is Brown Ranch a part of the solutions that are needed to meet your housing solutions? And for that kind of activity, we're gonna come back and if there's any big takeaways, what does this tell us about how we can best meet the needs of affordable housing? And that's the kind of share back with you from your tables to the group. So if you can number off just 1, 2, 3, so 1, 3, 1, 2, 3.
1, 2.
3, 1.
2, 3. 3.
1,
2.
1. 3. You're a 3.
2, 3.
2, 3. 2.
Right, so.
One's over here, two's over there, three's over there.
Awesome, just if you take your chair.
Part of that was right here.
Three over there.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you guys can see.
One.
Yeah.
Most of these. Simple for
For.
Okay, so the rest of you guys, these guys. That's all part of I was saying, all of just one, bring it up. There you go. So we're two separate meetings set up. One was the speech. But we don't say it's small. It's not an accident. A lot of that. There's many others. We want to know this. There's one of them was they are. Focused. The other lines. The size of the hour. We know when you're like, you're not isolating them. You're not close. Plans that. So I told us the free round flag for you guys. It's also, it'll be, you'll Sunday. That's. But they're very familiar with. Galaxies, yes, voices, and they would love to decide, and you're the better state. Those are a bunch of how this sense.
Well, like we wanted to see this, and one of the things that already wants all.
Okay, so why not start with. Gil. Okay, and I'm gonna try to bring you guys on to.
But-
Those are all part of. I don't know. So that out. All right, so first. Take a look at something. I'm trying not to do it. It's. What we already. It's under this bill. Could be you will see.
Even ability to do anything.
Where Egypt. Yeah. Feasibility. So these are on this side of the insurance. So really from. The small. It's not true. So our first question is. I thought these all the things that you felt was okay. I wasn't these needs to be developed, so this is able to benefits. Quickly. You have the valley. Your arch going. First, infill exactly. So that structure is one of the challenges. As they develop, as they control this, they are still it's available. Station coming as they are by sites, but community can provide. The other thing you don't have to prove it is. You know, that's that kind of developer is. See where it's actually. So then it's gonna try it, that's all. As a result of. Seems like on my first session. Last sites. Politically, that's I did sort of play or something. Some of them. Housing. That's it. Longer, right, a turn lane by not being is a single that. I mean, that's that. We don't have savers. So I be careful. It just doesn't seem like. You go back. Building start for it. Yes. Yeah. You know, he's so that I never brought in, you know, you pack. Well, this particular case of Stratford. And I agree, I'm trying to say. I just want to make sure. And that's in money for it. Yes. Eventually, restricted volume, all these things. That in the. A lot of the things you can be discussed on it, so the stack place the challenge, but also under issues. Basic is on us, that already set. All of So, very well said. So it's the fact that we have so many people that sometimes the fact that we you know, we all read that. This is a lot of this yesterday that you don't see that. But I said we are really it's here's on today, Phil, especially since both you to meet this hearing. Yeah, I think that a lot of people, you know, it seems to be some right now. And we're recently on alleys and size. You know what I mean? Is that as we town, they've always been there was like line that was not right. I think that honestly, we keep on out this and make us.
I really think that has no function. I'm not saying it can be personal. Yes. Hold on, you got. Okay, I know we'll get sort of once I wait, then that's down. Yes, it's a great idea. Right. It's like, as long as it's also good. School. I was about that. And but there's that, I'm just bringing up the middle. And that's. But yes. I just mean that, assuming that nobody will drive us. So that's too bad. Some rules. There's a lot of games.
That we're. How many years down there? It's big, that's the accommodation. You can't do it all.
And that's how we have. Hold on, we got. So that's what he said. I'm not assuming that. I'm not assuming that we didn't have Jacobs. Because they absolutely are. We just want to. Single stats. I'm sure I could be more ready to do no cost to my line to pull out 15 studio. That is a fact. That's all I needed. And planning on and they said, wow, they absolutely large. True. So they weren't really bad. So they kind of, but the idea that any product down, they absolutely tight. Anyway, let's say, you know, the band is like that,
Yes, and we should incentivize things how they.
Three stories. Oh, believe me, I live in central Denver and where what's that coming? So it's really just that. If you hear the complaints that I guess, you know, they're, yes, you're guys here, what about 20 people, because movies. It's just basically advocating, have looked it out and.
They're gonna do that, and it requires those who develop families have responsibility, younger, cultural,
It's there, it's me. There are. Or is he changed all of that, so I think it can't make a exception. I should say that there are, they actually graduated, they're like state regulations, they, you know, get a certification. The city not allowed. Actually, I think it's the actual thing. Yes. I think that's one. Also, nothing, it's going to the.
You're not having not, it's certainly more sassy, you're just. These days, but so having smaller, having smaller. You know, they don't necessarily. It's very tough. There's different ways to make it. It's like I live in. That is somewhat addressed in the last concerns, but. I think and similarly, that you need to sell. You know, find out ways that parts of, you know, where you can find some secret to develop, you know, cover. And so there's very simple. Massive, it's not like. That's a good point. That's true. But I mean, one, is where you guys are have now. Increase that. But right, be brought. Or not really said, it's one part of this, it's actually. And more as well as. You really have to. Right, you know, it's the same government. I don't really have to. The thing is, there is another sharing on a station. Those are big things in those businesses. It feels like they don't. I'm ready to power with suggestion. You should work on it. Because the English, these are challenges and that's how they. Yes. Some other fun. There's, we get. For 80. So totally that's right, yeah. They have a like, or, I don't even want to. It's the nature of the. Are in changes. But they all are. Obviously, the changes. Mobility, that was your point. All right, let's do this scenario. You guys ask the problems and you brought us questions. You know, the second is drought. You're all gonna housing or that Jason. That's all right. We're feeling. Yeah, I understand that sometimes people say all the things that are. And this is that every single bill, obviously gets smashed into themselves, you know, how do you do that for that? People are being. So it's aspects. I don't think you that are big, that have less challenges.
How many homes a year are built around county right now?
That's something.
I'm adding, we need to add 3,000 units in the next 10 years. We need to do is containers.
Yeah, it's so pretty, so it's that great, it's pretty, because Steamboat's not all the material. They're the people. Yeah, it looks like. They have to go. Otherwise, the won't read. And so it was open.
Exactly, yes, I thought like do this, and I stuff like. Oh, wait, that's the solution, you know, because that won't be, that's not referred to.
They all.
Lost supplies, man, the house is going to our ways, I mean, it's. It's the only point I was. Why do you say, being like. You know, these are just risks. For some other, I think you guys are. You know, more often, around the margin, it's increasing. Yeah, that's the reason why it's pretty. It's really hard to produce this. It's other. Yeah, I think. It's not cheap. Yeah, I'm not saying that all this bring up, yes, if you're. But hopefully true to feel, I think about this will make it easier to push that. Yeah, you expect that. Yeah. I'm saying. So. So far. This, now get to the summary. So to see if you're. I think it's talking about the underline or. Pretty much. So we get off.
My concern, like, I don't.
I feel like it only hurts the.
That not, they need it in their mouth, that's their confidence. But before, teachers.
Yeah, there's first of all.
That's really, we need to accommodate them.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, we should be for the solve the line. The real difficult is the all things. I think you have.
And like, the last 3 years.
They're down. I think that's city staff here on this. Back to the here. Anything else that you snap that just. Here's now. Sale is like. Changing 5 minutes, changing 5 minutes. So. So I think staff, there is specific that right? Their point was, they are allowed to. And so that's whether they're like that is really that
That's really interesting. Where, that's, you know, that's somewhere you guys need to be confident. You have to I agree with that. It's sort of over to. You guys gotta get to be able to sit on it, be pretty harsh.
This is what's really.
This, I think this is success. And so it's like. To an example, no, it's to suppose running that. Other places, but it comes about on one end. And for that loss. And so it started. And sort of. Trying to make sure we're reviewing. And then I'm gonna go tell them. As you heard. Talking about. And all these things are. But here.
Seeing the boundary. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, sorry. So now we go to, let's move to line. Let's see you guys.
Yeah.
So it's just.
That's something. To solve it for down. And my student range changes.
So, that's how the benefits and costs. Absolutely right. If I didn't say that, I'd say that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it can be by the AJ. That's going.
Our homes that are.
Describing this. The same language.
So as these things like investors for either level. What's happening is data center. I just better. They're interior. So he mentions Sam's just from hot. That on it. And a few different sections of it, and kind of other accidents. So like,
I mean, it's like you were saying.
feels very much.
Pushing those in the lower end and provide. What was that?
I think that's. But I think that's actually. Yes, that's.
It's not, it's not actually like, the important piece of it is, so the big, check. It's a lot, because it was cost benefits and just stay ahead of the scene, not ridiculous, one thing there, less. They one negative, well, I'd like to make that for one hand, or easy to have, one of the costs, was fed by. So they just have, that's it's not, it's this verge, that's just this is a. Or half. Can I see this being this? I don't think that's just what it is. You got a big problem. Yeah, but I have to. I think the big problem is so. Very big time to start asking. It's like really very. I think it's all aids to the capital. It's not accident. It's a good one, big with mine and yeah, this is a bad investment. You need to take a look. We are in people that was last 2 days. That's a list for you guys. It's not happening. Others, you know, to be, but also probably just our solution way how to get this understand. There's not get ahead of us to see it. If we don't even going to say that that's in my mind, down here, I think there's a very different component of that. People don't want to use their tax out efficiently. Taxation discussion.
And for me, I feel like this whole process is not letting us. I think that is going for community 5 years ago. I agree with them. No one about some serious. I also know that it was filed I was never so interested to stop. Can't go, you can't.
So, preliminary is 6,000. Yes, it should be, they're not long, and those types of, questions, are they, were they not ready to see?
Let's see what you're on. Now.
The whole reason we're, they don't have time park with, is to determine.
Yes, we can.
So, some other change. Is it overpaid, is it very often? Is it, I'm not really opting to leave for, I really like the next to be the roller kids or, all of those. Can we still have that? Yeah.
They can.
And well, it's not necessarily true. Starting out. So they fall together. Keep going. So many marketing costs, so players and happy with their expansion. Yeah, that's the hard thing. People don't have it. They want the county level, county. They also
Yeah, they have a cool program. Curious. Key takeaways from this, don't do it, mistake.
I've heard both sides. I don't want to. I'll ask you.
Well, I was looking to join the, I don't know what's the name. Yeah, thank you.
That's what I was gonna say. I'm good.
So, partially pilot, we have all these copies, so, whatever the number, so some percentage of.
You, most of you were at risk. And they were people in that neighborhood that agreed. But we also.
I thought that rental market out there. I think what I really, I think about is that earlier, stress.
Now, this time around, the city offers that they're here. Have them this time, that and let people back to change. My understanding is right now. Well, I'm not saying, but I'm saying this quote. It's not focusing on
That's the county board, they have the opportunity to invest in this thing, so they don't have these other events.
Step on. Very opportunity.
About other particular scenarios. Sorry.
I want to, before we move on, I want to make sure we address those here. Because I think the opportunity. With,
Together, my friends, here,
That's the, we don't always stand.
I wouldn't go ahead. Yeah, but I mean, look, And where you go, what's up? So, you know. We're having. All right, we're gonna take one back there. Sure, yeah, sure. Like, you see each other? Yeah, see each other. All right, let's stay. Thank you all. Bring your chair. Right, we're getting some music on here. Go ahead and bring your chairs back over here, friends. Oh, yeah. We're not over here.
You left.
We were supposed to ask her for a spokesperson, right?
Yeah.
All right, so thanks for coming back over this way. Just kind of manage expectations. We've got about a 20-minute little piece here, then we'll break for a little bit of dinner. So if you can hang on for 20 more minutes, we'll synthesize some important discussion. And we're just gonna hear out from each of the groups, from each of the facilitators will offer just a quick summary of that discussion. We'll open it up to your final comments, and then we're gonna use that poll list tool that we've used in the past, just to get a sense of the read in this group about the proper combination of these housing kind of options and scenarios. So did you mind filling us in on group one?
Sure, you want me to go through each topic?
Or yeah,
Yeah, let's do that. Yeah, so I tried to color code as much as possible, positives being purple, negatives being orange. So the positives we heard from infill and I tried to keep it reined in of let's add things that aren't in here. There's gonna be overlap, some things right here that we talked about. Infill, we could use STR funds for it. Infill is also underutilized land. means not just underutilized land, but underutilized properties like dilapidated buildings, structures. Challenging for a variety of product types, meaning hard to just do affordable single family on infill sites. City, it needs to look at new tools, whether it's inclusionary housing, potentially need to revisit either inclusionary housing or a fee in lieu system that you used to have. There's a political cost to both of these. Smaller units for infill, you can build smaller units with less parking, could require less subsidy. People brought up different housing types, co-housing, cottage courts, variety of issues. Some of the negatives that were brought up, we need to address the codes. You can't do infill without addressing your codes. Codes are too restrictive for that right now. Height limits, setbacks, whatnot. NIMBY issues, not in my backyard. So neighborhood opposition from infill projects. And then, we said that twice. Oh no, not just addressing the codes, simplifying the process, simplifying the development review process for infill development and for a variety of housing types. That was it.
Awesome. So you touched on a number of things we had. We also had, probably need to get an infill study to know the exact number of potential units that can be accomplished through infill. And the public will, if you rely on that strategy, you gotta recognize people have been resisting the use of infill. So there'd have to be a new strategy to build public will, incentivizing the existing housing stock to be used for long-term rentals or homeownership. And then people about the possibility that other towns are using kind of camper van, there's a camper van lifestyle that's existing, to kind of incentivize that as a possibility.
We talked, quite a bit about traffic and transportation and had a really good conversation about that. We also discussed, just to sort of cover the bases in terms of other things you guys did, also conversations about policy change and the need to do some work to make it possible to do infill. But focusing in on the traffic and transportation system, we talked about a couple of different things. One sort of that, because there was some discussion around like, will infill help or hurt our traffic challenges? And where we landed was probably both. There might be some decreases in overall regional commuter traffic if more people live closer to jobs, because suddenly folks who are currently commuting in would, those jobs would be, or those homes would be closer to their jobs, and they wouldn't have to travel as far. We wouldn't have the in commuters as much. Now, at the scale of really changing traffic, it'd be a lot, but that would be, there's potential for that. On the other hand, bringing infill into the community would create more local traffic and competition for parking and things like that. So we really talked about the need for two things. One, recognizing that we really need to look at our housing broadly as it's connected to transportation systems, and secondarily, that there is no traffic solution. Every one of the scenarios has built-in sort of traffic challenges, and probably, hard to differentiate really, which is sort of worse, just because they all bring a form of traffic. It's like, are we, more commuter traffic, more local traffic, or sort of more of a mix? The other piece was that infill really brought an opportunity to sort of help make our community remain more diverse and complete, because you can bring different product types, different housing types into the existing community.
Finding communities.
All right, on the outlying community discussion, or bedroom communities, if you will, a lot of negatives were brought up. Transportation improvements, the Clark's Point must be fixed if we're going to expect people to drive long distances. A lot of topography issues for many of the outlying communities, with the exception of Hayden. Challenging infrastructure, a lot of infrastructure. These outlying communities have the same, if not more, infrastructure issues as Steamboat has. You can't use our STR dollar funds in other communities. We're moving our problem elsewhere. It's an ethical concern somebody brought up. Is it other communities' duty to serve, to support Steamboat? There was some debate on some of the data. Well, it's not data. Some of the statements in our summary. It was brought up that construction costs actually are less in some of the other communities. We have high construction costs in Steamboat, so that was discussed a little bit. The codes are simpler, more simplified in some of the surrounding communities. Potentially creates new business opportunities in other communities, and then some discussion about the YVHA boundary potentially could be expanded. Elliott confirmed that. Yes, it could. It would take, it would take agreement with the city and the county to make that happen, but it's possible.
Good, that's something we picked up on too. So just quickly, we have Dan who had to rush back to Hayden, saying, there's increasing building up local resistance to this phenomenon. Businesses are having a hard time meeting the needs of folks that are turning into bedroom communities. They don't know if they're gonna be there during the day to keep the businesses open. And there's a lot of local resistance that's starting to build up. Transit costs go up with more commuting for the individual and for the region. And then we also came up with the idea of a little bit more of a regional housing strategy to preserve affordability in surrounding communities. And then really, a lot of people say those communities themselves should be in charge of how they develop. It shouldn't be something that Steamboat is telling them one way or the other, that should be something that people can determine on the ground.
Yeah, very similar. We talked about the same dynamics of how, as we allow our housing challenges to spill into other communities and really utilize that as a solution, we're essentially, pushing our impacts into other places and asking them to accommodate those costs. And there's sort of a robust conversation around this sort of the role Steamboat has in trying to try to drive this and lead at least the solutions, its own solution for housing, but then also we arrive at the same place of both the conversation around the boundaries of the YVHA, as well as the need for regional solutions moving forward.
Sounds like lots of good overlap. All right, so what we're gonna ask you to do in a moment, and just to kind of prepare for that, is to kind of get your assessment of where are we coming down on this? You've heard these discussions.
We didn't talk about Brown Ridge.
Oh my gosh, how did I leave that the last one?
I mean, I don't know why. Are we here to talk about Brown Ridge? He's always trying to scribble on Brown Ridge. We had very little time to actually talk about Brown Ridge, but some of the highlights here on the positives, the land is free, it's donated. But the utilities and infrastructure is a challenge. And there was a little conversation about county participation. Is it possible that we just have county help provide infrastructure versus annexation? We didn't talk much about that, just it was brought up. Big one that was brought up, can we sell off some of the property, annex the whole thing, sell off a big portion or a portion of it, the term big was brought up, sell off a portion of it to market rate uses, to generate funds to help offset some of the costs. There were city political issues that were brought up. Can it be smaller scale phase, maybe in less phases? Political will is an issue. And then the last one, so we kind of ended and got cut off when we were starting to talk about the need for a small amount of some commercial uses, actually.
Ours were, if it goes far, it needs to align with the sense of place of the west end of Steamboat. It's got to be financially sustainable with sufficient amenities over time. You can provide new amenities for the West Steamboat and for the rest of the community. It could be a place that people want to come to regardless of where you live. And it's important to think about management. Who's going to manage Brown Ranch over time? Explore kind of auctioning out pods for development, small pieces that you guys talked about as well. And including transportation has to be part of the story. The community won't support it if it doesn't feel like it understands the impact on transportation.
So most of our conversation around Brown Ranch, which was also shorter than we would have liked, we just ran out of time, my fault, was that the type of talking through the type of opportunity it presents from a housing perspective, which that evolved into not just housing. And it was a good back and forth around, our needs to provide ownership, our needs to provide rental, what people really need, what people really want, and how we can integrate our thinking and understanding around those needs into a place. And fundamentally, the opening comment was Brown Ranch presents an opportunity to really provide and meet a range of our needs and create a diverse community. Which was also a comment that was brought up around infill, if you recall from our earlier part. And it's the sort of combination of a mix of different housing types. And so ultimately, I think the group landed in a place where, we were saying ownership, it presents a unique opportunity for ownership that's affordable, which we don't have as many chances for in other types of sites. So that was sort of a unique opportunity it provides, but that rental also needs to be an option, and again, kind of coming to the place where what I took away was sort of how do we blend together those different housing types to create neighborhoods and places that really meet a variety of our different housing needs. And then looking at that in terms of design, building types, and then development program options, which is where we also got into looking at some other land uses and development types in terms of, you know, Kelly was bringing up some ideas in terms of different types of commercial or, you know, small scale industrial that could fit into some of the context there. So those were the pieces we got to.
Now, back to, I can't believe I skipped the last one, but now back to what I was gonna say. Gonna just ask you like, okay, you've heard the community's wrestling with this, there was a predominant feeling in our community meetings, like. We need all of these things, this demand is enormous, we're way behind, people are living in desperate situations. Don't say no because you are opposed to the previous definition of brown ranch, we could do it right this time, which will be our conversation after dinner. But at a high level, does it need to be part of the solution? That's the question that you ask. Is there anything people want to say to each other before we take that question? Where you see this going, some high level kind of persuasive points as you see as this relates to the conversations we just had? Where we ask it kind of way in.
Like, the property was given to the housing authority, right? So that's a huge resource. You could take a portion of that, sell it off for market rate, help finance the infrastructure and everything. And sell a small, I live in a downtown little neighborhood, 30 out there, 10-acre lots. One of my thoughts is that they could break off these 10-acre lots, sell them for, like they did 25 years ago, $40,000-$50,000. So that would be 500,000 per acre. So let's say for half acre or 2 acres, because you need the roads and things. So you're talking $250,000 an acre for the water and sewer and electric, plus the money you're gonna take, sell half of it. You know, if you really wanna get serious about building things, and then people could buy their little 10-acre lot, put their own home on it, have home ownership, if they want, you could build a bigger house, go out. I don't know, and then this. The building department of the city needs to say, would they allow like HUD type houses, you know, I mean, they need snow loads and everything, but you don't have to have R60 roofs, you don't need air exchange systems, you know, triple pane windows, all these things that you need to meet the energy code these days, that makes the houses so expensive. I know, I mean, I work with a bunch of people who could build their own little house, doesn't necessarily have to be that little, but I mean, there's an opportunity that, and it wouldn't be all a cookie cutter neighborhood, everyone would build their own little, you know, and do little neighborhoods in different sizes, it's just, there's so many options
So,
that they could, but.
so
You
first,
know, like Kelly said, light industrial out there way. 13th Street used to be west of Steamboat and all that, and now it was county, right? So I mean, all of that. We'll just keep pushing it west if that's the direction you wanna go.
so, right, I'm gonna take, so the two parts of what you're saying is, yes to Brown Ranch. And then the how, you've got a lot of ideas for the how, but first it's yes, we have to do that to make that possible. Kelly, where do you weigh on this?
Yeah, so. I really feel like, I don't know if anyone else owns businesses in here, or has tried to buy commercial property or has done anything. I've got a Mark's Loop across the road from me has been put through the ringer with the city to put a sidewalk in front of it, to put a fencing around it, just so he can store stuff, because he's that desperate to find commercial industrial in Steamboat. And I really think that if we're talking about building houses or rehoming people is the way I think it is. We're rehoming them out of Craig, out of Hayden, out of Oak Creek, which in my opinion is gonna hurt those communities, right? But if we don't put a commercial industrial component in Brown Ranch, there's no reason to have more people, because you're not gonna have any more jobs for any more people that are gonna be able to have or start jobs or own businesses and have commercial industrial space. So that, to me, that's one of the most important parts of Brown Ranch, because just like Brian said, you know, we got 13th Street, I just can't believe that I'm gonna have to drive by, there's gonna be storage on a 2-acre lot where there could be 100 workforce houses that are 1 or 2 bedroom, they could house employees that are restaurants and Steamboat, they could block to one, right? But if we don't put a commercial industrial component out there, that's not gonna happen, right? So
So again, yes, but the how is make sure it's got commercial industrial.
I think that's one of the things that has got to happen.
Great, have that in there, but Chrissy,
I'm struggling with yes, without having any definition for ground range.
great, so the conundrum that causes, like, how can I say yes to something? So one way to think about it is the answer to how is yes. We have to commit as a community to say we want to move forward to do these kinds of things. What is it going to look like? You're not being asked right now to support a specific developer. You're being asked as leaders of the community. When you've heard the sense of urgency amongst your, for your rental community, from your employer community, do we need to include this in some way? Now, we don't yet know what that's gonna be, but we're outlining it in the kind of articles of it. So as someone in the leadership seat on behalf of your community, does it need to be part of it?
Yeah, I understand it, but I think where she's coming from is, you know, we had something pushed down our throats. And it's just, there's still out there. And everybody is still worried about that. And how is this gonna end up? Are we gonna do all this and then they're still gonna build whatever they want to build up? There's still that sense of how.
And why wouldn't the question be yes to input?
Well,
Or yes to something else?
yeah, you're already doing infill, you're using the surrounding communities, and as we've talked about, the trend of those two strategies is not moving towards your desired future. That's the fact of the matter.
This committee, our exclusive goal is to, yes, no, on that.
Can we figure out a way to make this work?
Yes, that, the whole point here is yes or no.
Yeah.
Let's get Mike.
I said this in my group, but I thought of a much better way of saying it. So Brown Ranch is kind of like a savings account, except instead of money, it's our community's land. And if you have a relative and they get a huge pile of savings from a relative dying, and then they blow it all immediately, they're not very responsible and you're not gonna really trust them. But with the infill and the outlying communities, that's trying to be responsible first and, you know, using your savings sparingly. I would be supportive of Brown Ranch only if it also came with any other policy objectives that can already be accomplished so that we use the land sparingly. And I don't care if it takes 100 years to build out the land. It will eventually probably be built out, but if it gets built out immediately or in one all-encompassing solution, I think that's what scared away a lot of people the last time. If the housing authority shows, hey, community, we're gonna be really efficient with your tax dollars and expanding your community and putting this change for it by doing all these other things as well that we already talked about, then it might work a lot better.
So just brilliant lead up to the second part of it, which is the definition, the parameters. So remember, right now, there is no plan from YVHA to do anything specific on Brown Ranch. It's dedicated to affordable housing. That's part of the donation. But there's no exact thing that's being proposed. So you're gonna be helping craft. It needs to be built to these specifications. So that's part of the next step.
I follow up, I think what I heard was phased construction, I would add within a budget.
A feasible budget, I think. Bill?
I would say a qualified yes. I'm a qualified yes to Brown Ranch, no doubt. But, you know, I reserve the option to vote no when it becomes, you know, something that's solidified and says, you know, it's gonna be this big, or it's gonna cost this much, or it's gonna look like this, or it's gonna do this.
That's a good way to think. A provisional yes, subject to review on the details, and then we'll define the details. That's each.
And lucky for you guys, just really quickly, because this kind of relates to two comments that have been made. You don't have to feel the burden of like making the actual choice for the community. Like at some point, it's true that, you know, part of, you know, you were saying like your job is to figure out, is there a pathway forward? But the focus is really like, what is that viable pathway? Let's try to put that together. If there isn't, and it becomes very clear from this work, then that's really gonna sort of, you know, it still would be up to YVHA and they can say, you know, well, we're pretty sure there is, you know, there are alternatives, but the final decision ultimately would rest with the whole community. And so for Bill to know, like, you guys don't have to feel like it's your job to decide whether or not your community is actually gonna build Brown Ranch. What you have to do is focus yourselves on working with this information and trying to get to a point where whether you guys feel like working together, you can start pulling together the sort of solutions that would actually make it work. Not only work from a feasibility perspective, an affordability perspective, like making a great place, but we know part of putting all those things together is that it's about building something, an idea, a set of strategies, a vision for Brown Ranch that your community could get behind. Because ultimately, if we do all this work and maybe everybody in this room gets to a place where we sort of have a sense of what Brown Ranch could be or we'd like it to be, but it's still fundamentally out of sync with where the community is, then yeah, it's not gonna happen. And I think everybody should reserve that right, Bill. I mean, there's nothing we're gonna ask you guys to do today to say vote on something you have no clear definition of what it would be.
And I'd like to revise my answer to you, Christie, based on Bill's, but this is a provisional, like, all things being equal, and then let's jump into the conversation afterward about how it has to be built to really work. So, Richard?
I think we've now discussed all three possibilities, and I think all three are part of the solution. So I would vote for Brown Ranch or moving forward on Brown Ranch. I think it's an important piece of the puzzle we have to solve.
The provisional, yes, subject to defining out.
I think everybody understands the metrics you're asking. You're getting all the pushback because this group does get represented out in the community as voting for the next phase of Brown Ranch. Is this even actually a choice? Is somebody from the housing authority willing to say that the next step on this, if this group says no, is they're gonna sell off this land for whatever profit they make and move on? Because I mean, everybody in here is here because there's something in Brown Ranch. So if you leave the umbrella completely open, of course, there's something that can be done that alleviates the housing issue in Steamboat to some extent. There's no scenario the housing authority turns around and just sells this piece of land and says, well, we tried and failed and we're done, right? Or does somebody want to correct? Otherwise, this is a false choice. Yes is the answer. I think everyone feels there's yes, and everyone has a different round of tree branches that we're going to play with.
I'm a no.
Charlie, I'm not sure we're there yet. I think that's why we're having this
So
conversation.
it's, okay, so but if that's the case, if there's someone from the housing authority that says, this group is here because we're ready to sell this land off, move on.
Now, this, again, I'll just try to restate what we presented last time and also this time, like, this group hasn't been handed the keys to the car of like, you can have it and do whatever you want. This group has been given the opportunity and the challenge of trying to come up with solutions that could work. So we can get to a place where we can say, yeah, you know, like reasonable minds can disagree on a lot of these things. I think that's fine. And we all do. The question is, can we work together across the different perspectives and, you know, divisions of sort of perspective we have on this? Say, actually, if you do this piece, like for me, it would take this to make it work. For me, it would take this to make it work. For some of you guys, it may be that, you know, it may be that at the end, like, you're like, there's nothing really can change my mind, and that's okay. The question though is, can we begin to put together a framework of solutions and strategies and like, these are the things that would be critical to make this happen? That if this group of people did come in with intentionally diverse perspectives on this and say, yeah, we're pretty aligned on this, and even those who still don't want to support Brown Ranch, understand that their perspectives were used to help shape what that framework is in a way that we can clearly state, like, these are the types of concerns that people have leveled and raised. So that's captured really well. That is sort of really what we're trying to get you guys to. Now, I don't think that the housing authority can say, there's not enough of you guys here to say, you know, if this group got to a place of saying like, no, we're not gonna do it. I don't think we know what the housing authority would do. Obviously, it would probably require sitting back and like, how do we want to approach this? But I don't also think you guys should put on your shoulders the weight of Brown Ranch as a go, no go. That's what we tried to say at the last meeting too. It's our job is to see, can we come up with a viable solution that can build more support in the community and starting with you all. And if not, then it does create a real interesting question for the city and YVHA to say, well, if that group of people couldn't come together, learn together, kind of look at the broader context and challenges and issues, and then start looking at what other places have done, and then start actually putting the solutions together in phase two. If they can't get to a yes on this and where they feel comfortable putting something forward and saying, here's our framework for how we move this forward, then we probably really do have to have a conversation, I would imagine. I don't think we can put you guys on the spot to answer that, but does that make sense?
So the question is not whether or not some feasible solution exists for Brown Ranch. The question is whether or not this group and by expansion, the community as a whole can come together at this moment in time to use Brown Ranch in some feasible way. That's a very different question, and I'm not totally sure I've got confidence that this group or the broader community could get that point so close to the annexation. We're pretty burned recently from the annexation, right? So, okay, that's a different question.
I think it, hopefully, you might want to restate it, because it shouldn't be too different.
Yeah, I feel like it's the same one, which is, if, well, in a moment, and in fact, we're getting closer because I want you to have dinner too, but is to get your sense of where you are right now, if Brown Ranch should be one of these three, And then after the conversation is, what would it take to win people over? What would it take to make this work? To be a viable solution? I think, at least in the community conversations, there's starting to be an upward spiral of what that could look like. Lessons learned from last time that could be incorporated, how this one could go forward and be better. Let's get Abby and then Jim.
It feels like this vote, there's pressure, I think, on the no people, because if you can tell us, like, you're not committing to anything, but that's layered upon all this context of a lack of trust of the housing authority and the city and each other.
Yes.
And so the no feels like the safe way to say, if I say no, I know this really scary old plan is never gonna happen. And so I just don't know if this group can, in good faith, that no, even if it isn't like set in stone, whatever we vote, I don't know if we can make that vote without addressing those transparency concerns, whether they're legitimate or not, and whether they're factual or not. I think that could be what I'm hearing in the room, is that those things have to be addressed, because when given a tool of stopping the scary thing, whether or not, I think that effectively is what it is for a lot of people. And I don't have dinner too, so I hope I did this.
Yeah, that's good. Jim, then right,
No, I want to reiterate some of that. There is a huge barricade right now, today, summer of 25, in this community's perspective towards the developer, towards the housing authority and the developer. And they have made a lot of mistakes, and I don't need to beat them up here and now, but this community is not going to support something that has their name on it and the Brown Ranch's name on it, regardless of what it is, until somehow that is reformed, that perspective by the community. Doesn't matter what the individuals in this room think. There's 6,000 voters out there that voted on this thing. And the 58% that voted no, that number has not shrunk. If anything, it has grown.
I'm gonna come back to that's a great point, Jim. Right.
I was just going to add that I think we need to have some level of faith in the process. We got to where we are because of the process that's in place. Annexation. Hold on, let me speak.
Sorry.
We got here because of the process. There was an annexation that was approved by city council. There was a referendum put on the ballot. It was voted on. It was rejected. It was overturned.
No, there was people in the community that got together and got signatures and got it put on the ballot.
Exactly, that's part of the process.
That's two different things. You just said, oh, it's a referendum that got put on the ballot. It wasn't. There were people in the
I might be
community.
using the wrong
Petition, and got it put on.
I think you guys.
Be careful, this is, he's trying to state this, I don't think.
It's all. That the people coming together, Kelly, the people coming together and putting the signatures on there, that's part of the process.
Let's say where the signatures against it, I mean.
Yes.
It's all the.
I'm saying the process worked and it got, the bad plan got rejected. So let's have some faith in the process that maybe there's a chance that a good plan can happen. And to your point, Charlie, if a good plan can't happen, it'll fail again. And then they won't be able to develop it. They'll have to sell it, or they'll have to, I don't know.
Let's get these, I'm gonna stack these hands here. Don, Steve, Colin, and we.
Can I go up
Don,
5 seconds?
Don, Steve, Colin, yep.
Things, pretty much, kind of aligning with what Rich said, is that if we're going to say go, no go, as we can't just say that. We need to have some framework, not to lay out what they have to do as far as elements, like how many units, and what's the commercial stuff. But the idea that they are going to address within the framework of a go, no go, and as Rich said, with some conditions that they need to address to satisfy the community as well as city council, whether it's zoning codes and building codes and mixed uses, commercial market properties, as opposed to strictly workforce housing. I mean, these are all things they have not really addressed satisfactorily to the community and make it part of the process. The city, if it was approved, next time.
This isn't the point either, to ask whether, like, again, the term no go and go is it's more like a highway. And like what we're looking at is like, there's an off ramp here. If we really are pretty sure, like, this is not viable, if we've learned it.
That's from
And
the
so,
recommendation.
right, so what I wanna say is, understand that the opportunity to sort of work on those details is really what the next door to be open is to do more work. Also, I think Bill made the point earlier in a way that, I think really resonated with me, which is, the answer to how on something really difficult like this is yes. I'm a parent, and so I have young kids right now, and I know there are certain things that like the how, if I'm focused on whether like the details of the how before committing to like, no, we're gonna have to do this. I don't know how I'm gonna get you in the freaking car, but you're getting in. That is how it is. You have to just be like, and then here's the deal. Getting the yes right now, be like, you know what? We're gonna try to figure this out. Doesn't mean that there might come a point in which like, we missed the appointment, my kid doesn't get in the car, I'm like, it didn't work. But still, like, it was, it's about saying like, I think we need to move, from what I've learned, I think Brown Ranch is a part of the solution or not. And so what really has to do is wrestle with these choices. We have a range of housing needs and it's pretty deep, and their problem is pretty significant. And part of the question today and why we've woven in these choices is it's like, these are trade-offs we have. You can try to do more through infill. But as you guys talked about, like, you're gonna learn there's some opposition there too, but there's opportunity. You're probably gonna think that's gonna be part of your solution. You can do the sort of no action, which is letting more of the housing happen in other communities and sort of try to deal with that side of it. Or you can say Brown Ranch is part of the solution. If you don't have to choose between them now, because in real life you can do them all. But the question is Brown Ranch for you guys, based on what you've learned so far in the conversation we had, it's really like thinking about what we just went through, does it make you feel like Brown Ranch fits in the sort of suite of solutions?
Steve? Okay, I think that the order that we're approaching this is, I would handle it, and I would recommend going and finding some expert commercial developers who do this all the time. They go to growing cities and they go in and they take the risk of extending cities with making it a desirable community and not feel like a ghetto of all just affordable housing. And make it something where we could find those people who could advise us, and then we can put them through an RFP process. And let's have the neighbors, they can build a nice shopping area for that community, so people out the west end feel like this is just as substantive as anywhere else in Steamboat, and then they get to live there and feel good as well as all the other people in the county. And then they can build some market pricing, make money, and then they leave space, but they do the prep work so that the Upper Valley Housing Authority can build affordable housing, apartments, and then condos, single family attached, and then single family housing.
Oh, good. The very first question they would ask us to do is what we're asking you to do right now, is what are your high level priorities as a community? And that's the exact conversation we're trying to have. And to your point, Jim, I agree with you. The trust needs to be rebuilt. That is exactly true. But it doesn't matter what developer you had to build the Brown Ranch. They need to know what we're asking. Do you want to solve this housing? What are the parameters? What could you live with as a community? So I agree with you. That needs to be solved. And I would be happy to work with you on how you build trust with YFHA. But I don't want you to let that stop you from asking the questions and solving it. We've heard from hundreds of your community members who are dying for your leadership. In fact, one of them said to Rich today, we asked him, what do you want to tell the STC? Don't do nothing. Don't do nothing. And the power in their voice was serious. You have in your hands the leadership of the community. And then you get to answer how to do it well.
that's the key leadership move, Collins, get you and then back, and then we're gonna let you have.
Questions being, you're framing the question, get it, like, you're trying to decouple political from the yes, should we or should. I think if we had a unanimous, on the other we can have a unanimous, even a no vote, say, you know what, I love this plan. We can have a unanimous decision, and as soon as we take it out there, the distrust in the YBHA
Has to be addressed.
it will fail regardless of if it's a perfect plan.
It is so true,
So trying to decouple those things is not, we're putting the cart before the horse.
what we're trying to do is,
Safety accountability on the YBHA side.
that's fine, well, we're doing, but I don't think we're trying to put what we're trying to ask you is, let's say that there's a pathway for rebuilding trust. Your challenge is to define what the development should, any developer builds.
Right, but what 3 or 4 people have said is that's the crux, right?
Great, we're
That's
gonna,
the crux.
we'll work on the side to build out trust, but it is a separate question. Whether or not
They're intrinsically, and they're so connected. That's what we're trying to say.
Well,
They're not.
well, maybe, let me just test this out. So what I feel like the community has been saying, and I feel like a number of you all have been saying, is that there's a lot of reasons that plan failed. Trust related to YBHA connected. But for a lot of people, when you join this is, I'm in favor of doing something at Brown Ranch. I just didn't like that. So what we're trying to get is, what would it take to make it work for me? Which I think is separate from the question of who develops it. It's still a question to be answered and that we need your help with. And I'm starting to feel like I want you to dinner. I don't think it's.
Be here, we didn't.
Right, exactly.
See it yet.
So help me understand.
That's true. I don't think that's true. I think there are plenty of people here who don't want to see that.
I want you to hear
So,
from Rita.
I don't trust that. I mean, so. We all agreed, or one of the things that was in this opening statement, or let me back up. When I came to Steamboat 5 years ago at the Community Foundation, we held a number of listening sessions around the valley. And we heard one thing, we asked people, what do you love about living here? This will be very familiar to you. So I'm sure you say this to visitors. I'm sure you've heard it from other people. But it's that idea that Steamboat is a real town. What do you mean by real? Think about it. What people mean by real is that it's like a place where there are real people working with real jobs, living in Steamboat. If we know, and the other thing you hear all the time is we don't want to become Aspen. What do you think people mean when you say we don't want to become Aspen? It's a place where there's only rich people, very, very rich. So if you want to stay real, we need to build affordable housing. So can we all agree that we need to build affordable housing?
Affordable for who?
Affordable for workforce.
Speed lift operators or teachers?
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like the people.
Anyone who works here.
They're like the
Affordable for anyone.
industry sectors that are part of
They are
medium operated.
anybody. who
That's
works here.
everybody, that's everybody.
Exactly.
So it's not.
But so far, like, we can't even get the data on what they've done so far. You can't get the data on the apartments that they built. Cottonwoods, I know my husband has requested the agreement to develop there just to see what they do. This is talk about trust today. Talking about the soils report, eliminating Jim DeFrancia from the conversation was huge to me. Because he does have experience with huge projects and maybe he's a jerk. You know, I don't know, but we deserve a right to hear what he had to say. And he kind of said what he's saying. I have his copy of his synopsis of it. He said the same thing. The only thing he added is that, yeah, you can do it, but at what cost? Is it affordable? Because like you said, oh, we can do it slow. Can't do it slow because you have to build the infrastructure for as if it's a finished development up there. You have to finish it. It's $100 million. And that's what bring the big developers in here that have done this and let them talk. But that's where the trust is. And fairly recently, somebody on the board from YBHA considered anybody who brought up the soils report the opposition. His words exactly. That's where we are today with the YBHA. And that's why I know it's not no Brown Ranch. It's no with the people who are managing it. It's no with like, let's get all the pertinent information. And I don't feel like we're getting that. I feel like we're being directed. So.
I think, very quickly, he's already said, we have to decouple the two things. Don't take the words Brown Ranch. Question is, do we as a community, what Tim was saying, need affordable housing? And is a buildable property a way to solve that problem? It's not,
And then it's up to the voters at the end.
yeah, so the question is, do we need it? Yes or no? And then, is a buildable property a way to solve? Yes.
And then,
And
when you build on
yes.
that, how do we build it so it works? That's the next question.
And who's building it? Who's managing it? Somebody
That's-
with
so
experience.
I'm definitely hearing-
My PhD is out kicking their customers.
So definitely here, in this process, we will commit to figuring out a way. What you guys are saying, that until that moves forward, this group can't succeed, we'll figure out a way to get that trust rebuilt. We'll figure out a way to incorporate that into the process. If that is what's preventing this group from moving forward.
This process is part of that.
Yeah, we need you to be able to also answer some of these other questions. So we, you know,
Well, there's another option that very few people have considered, and that's, it's called Brown Ranch for a reason. It's a ranch. It has been a ranch in the past. That's its cultural history. That's also the cultural history of West Steamboat, is ranching, whether you believe it or not. And there are conservation easements out there on ranches. There's the river out there. It's very scenic. But a thing to do with the Brown Ranch would be to the entry of it and quite a ways back, put a conservation easement on that and have the public trail go through that open space and have it look like a ranch and use the facilities that exist there for the 4-H kids and have CSU Extension manage it and have like at least half of that property remain a ranch for the whole community to enjoy and understand what ranching is, what livestock, working with livestock is, and then have the purchase of development rights money go for infill housing. And then at the back of it or somewhere in there, have some affordable trailer park or something for the Hispanic community, the people who really need housing. And so that's just my vision, and
so
take it or leave it.
I'll just go back. So that's a yes, and the how for you is more basically like, but we need to at least settle in on it. Is this go forward as a group?
You have to remember that Steamboat, like when I came here in 71, was an agricultural town. That's all that was here, ranching. And so this is an agricultural hub, but much has changed. A lot of ranchers need other ranchers to be next to them. So that's why you don't see them here anymore. Like in South Route, yes, there's a bunch of ranchers left because there's a concentrated group, like a tribe, so to speak. They speak each other's language. They know what they're doing. Without a doubt, what has happened in this valley is not that. It is something else. And the thing of it is I think that we need to kind of move forward. I've just lost my thought. That's older. Okay, you could help me?
Let me sort of try to, go ahead. I just want to make one quick closing statement. These are all terrific how ideas. None of this how can ever happen unless it starts with a yes. Yes, and.
So like, and let's take a simple approach to this, which is, let's do envision we're on a highway right now, right? You know, like you're flying down Vale Pass. And that's us. We're all in the car together. It's one of the trucks. Truck ramp, exit. And we're like, hey, we're going down the highway and the highway is taking us on an exploration of trying to figure out what it would take to make Brown Ranch successful, which includes all the things you guys have been talking about. And going down that highway, it doesn't mean that everybody's committing to Brown Ranch and saying, I'm for it. It doesn't also mean that at the end, when we get to that destination of doing the work we have to do together, you have to be in favor with what we came out with. You might say, you know what, everybody else in the group liked the color, liked this idea, not for me, and here's why, and we will make sure that's articulated. The question for today is, do you guys want to keep exploring and move forward? Or is your preference to say, I've learned enough to know that I am taking the off ramp. I think we should take the off ramp because I don't see Brown Ranch as a part of the solution, or even if it was, it's inviable. I recognize the question of inviability kind of relates to the trust issues, but it's a question of, we're looking at a property, you guys have a need. And it's like, if it's not Brown Ranch, then you're committing to saying, okay, it's gonna be infill and bedroom communities, and then, you're gonna have to do a lot of work there. So the question is, you guys wanna keep exploring Brown Ranch or take the emergency, truck ramp? That's a simpler way to look at it.
So we're gonna actually call the question in, just, and so we can take a quick break. This is, back to Bill's, this is the provisional, yes. Where do you stand on this question of including Brown Ranch? There's two different phrasings of it. So I'm gonna ask you to pull out your phones in a moment to join us in this poll list. We know that there's a lot of conversation that happen after this, which is how do we make it viable, but just to take, get your kind of temperature. If you scan that QR code, you'll see the kind of question that we're asking you to weigh in on. You'll see a series of two statements come up. There's slightly different phrasing. One is, to meet our affordable housing needs, Steamboat will need to pursue all three options. Or the second one is, and then you'll choose, do I agree with that statement? Do I disagree with it? Or do I I'm not sure. The second one is, should we just use the first two that we're currently using? And same question. You can also add your own if you feel like there's another question that we're not getting to. You can add your own to it, and everyone will kind of have a chance to weigh in on that. But it would be helpful just to get a sense of where we stand right now as we go into the how. We pull out those. Let me know if anyone's having difficulty pulling that up or needs to borrow a phone.
Yes.
You need to get closer, sometimes it's hard to move back.
Yeah, might help to get are people getting in? Are those questions popping up? Yep.
Don't you think we needed more discussion
We'll have a discussion afterwards about what, like, for those that.
before this?
Well, we've had the discussion before it. The next one is, what
No,
would it
that's
take to?
This
This
is not much of a
This is not,
This is not a final decision.
We're coming back in August.
This is just to get a sense of where people are coming down. And then for those that say no to this, what will it take to make it work? After you've weighed in on those two questions, wait a minute to see if other people are adding other questions to give feedback on.
Are you doing?
Give this a fill it out.
Honestly, Bill,
Oh, it's good for that. I think when they opened it. Oh, so.
your group has.
Oh,
Yeah. So we're supposed to go to.
Yeah, so you'll have some cards that pop up. Just respond to that question. Do you agree with that? Do you?
Or pass, and there'll be a series of questions.
Oh, you don't think you should?
Yeah, yes. Once you hit on theory, you're
When I hit submit, it says there was a year, so that that messed up.
you didn't write it, yeah, so now it moves.
Anyone else need a phone? Did you already? And when you were voting, go ahead and grab some dinner, we'll move the chairs around.
So that, so. Those are the ones.
I've never been able to.
Yeah, that's great.
But I
Yeah.
I usually don't worry about it, but.
Yeah, hey, Bill, if it doesn't pop up, is no problem.
Is there like a setting?
Oh.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't have one, I don't know, what should borrow my phone? Yeah, you should. Yeah, is it?
I'm trying to hit submit, but no, I can't.
You too?
No, I can.
You're already.
Yeah.
What's happening? I'm not putting yourself. Or is that right? I'll be saying the same thing. Whether you agree, disagree, sure.
Yeah.
And then I hit submit.
So I don't think you need to hit submit. You're really.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
You're just hitting agree.
So now you just close it.
And then it's just.
No.
No.
Good to know.
Yeah, thanks so much. You go back to the.
Nowadays, yeah, but worldwide.
Food is out. Plastic silverware, that you'll see back there. But just vote on those and then. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's gone through all the statements and you have to agree this. So they're.
Okay.
They're saying we need more than just fill in. Yeah, I need you don't understand the same. They close that work? Yep, awesome. All right. Yeah, so.
But yes, it is not. We know how to. Oh. It's so happy. Like the last. Of course, yeah. Also.
There we go. Yeah.
I'd like to already have. Yeah.
Oh, yes.
I early that's so happy, but I didn't know how much to say.
Right here.
Like you're like full size.
don't see that anything but I like it when there's a bunch of things.
Yeah. So if you, here's my,
And now you don't know what it is.
right. Yeah. Remember.
Yeah.
Well. Yeah. Yeah. Like,
The biggest project that I $1,000.
They're allowed.
No, I think I'm. Yes, yes.
That was not by.
But I do not mind. Well, it was
Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna start back up again. There's some technology challenges we're trying to work through, but, what?
Yeah.
We need 6 tables, so sit at, find a spot at the different tables. And, right now that one's not very popular, so somebody can jump in there. We're gonna have enough for 6. Looks like we could probably do 5 tables, just 5. I think we can. 5.
Stays.
Yeah.
So are we? Facilitating or we still, let's try it. Okay, you're good. Yeah. So. You mean when you need to, yeah.
Okay, you got it. If folks be willing to grab a seat at a table.
You're getting anybody.
We're not getting anybody back.
We just need everybody to sit at the table, it doesn't matter which one.
Grab a seat at any table. Any table.
Well, this is gonna be different groups.
Wanted to bring up one
Just
perspective
sit at any
from
table.
fire
Any table.
that I think is a really big.
There you go.
All right, friends, so I just want to own something in that previous conversation. We had some feedback from folks that those who were taking felt really forced and not authentic. And it was felt like a go or no go at Brown Ranch, and what we had intended it to be was all of these solutions all seem to make us part of the conversation. So when we look at the results, we're not sure they are accessible. We've got a little bit of a template, and we're not sure the feedback you put in there was the actual question that you should have been answered. So instead, I think what a lot of you were saying is, hey, we know what we're saying yes to. We need to be able to know what we mean by Brown Ranch, or as Richard said, any developable property. If there was gonna be some additional developable property, what has to be part of that? In order for you to say, this is part of the solution. And so you started this, and did you go ahead and pass these out too? You started this last meeting. You developed a set of principles that you feel like, that you feel like are gonna be needed to make this viable. And we've already given you a chance to deepen that conversation tonight. So if we're gonna solve the overwhelming housing challenge in Steamboat, and Brown Ranch were to be part of that, I could support it if it did it like this. And these are some of the principles you've developed. It has to be mixed use. It has to be, and then all these different things you've been dying to talk about. We want to capture those things. Kind of see where you landed last time. There's some strategies and principles to achieve affordability. Which of those do you feel like have to be on them? Those are your top priorities that are going to be captured on the flip chart on there. That this is the way it becomes viable. So if you felt a little pressured, I want to own that we were kind of, we thought we were just asking, should all of these strands there, but it ended up being the wrong way. Let's do it right this time to say, what would it take? You get a chance to define what Brown Ranch would look like if it's part of the solution. You want anything you want to?
No, yeah, it's a really simple question. What would it take to make it work, or make it work for you? We do need to rebalance the tables a little bit. I'd like to get a couple of folks who are at some of the bigger tables to come over to this one. We need at least probably 2, maybe 3. So there's a lot at this one, and that one, and maybe the person can come over here.
Thanks, Jim.
Thanks, Jim. There you go, good guys.
Thanks,
Right.
Don.
Um,
And the way this will work is we'll talk for about 15 minutes in this group. One person will stay at that table. Everybody else will mix around to a different table. The person who stays welcomes the next group of folks that explains a little bit about the conversation that was there before, and then you have the next round.
How do you decide who stays?
Just choose one person that's willing to be the ambassador.
That'd be willing to be the ambassador. And we still could use one more person at this table if there's somebody who's willing to switch teams.
All right, simple question. What does it take to make Brown Ranch?
Stays the office. Writing it down. You guys are in charge. You are writing your ideas down on that piece of paper. What will it make Brown Ranch work? But you're talking about it. Bill, maybe describe the discussion, how to discuss and capture.
Yeah, so a lot, you've heard things like, let's start the conversation. Start one last, we're not. You've heard a lot of people, hold on, please. We can move a little bit more into like, that's things like, for the community to support this, it has to be, some market rate affordable, some market rate housing with, affordable units at workforce levels that people can afford to live in there, multiple, along the housing ladder. That's an example of things people have said. That's what it would take to make the community supportive. You've probably got other examples of this. People can chime in, you can push back against each other, clarify, add things to that list. If this is your chance to design the parameters, instead of saying I'm against something from the past, this is a chance to say I want to be for parts of the solution going forward.
One question over here for clarification people were asking is, do we all write at the same time? Is there do we discuss them right?
Yep, a scribe at your table is kind of capturing your ideas, so you get a chance to kind of think about, so someone with good handwriting at each table would find be the scribe. That's the first. You're gonna be there for about 15 minutes. But yeah, it's not just about
There will be a
I mean, I think trailer whoever using this to buy your layers under this. But I think you could add. Well, yeah. So that's the other stuff. That's. Keep track of.
Two more minutes in these groups and then I'll have you rotate. 2 more minutes in these groups, then I'll have you rotate. Alright, have one person stay, everybody else chooses a different table. One person stay, everybody else chooses a different table. Grab into the table. One person stays, the rest will be around. They're joining another table and adding to those.
Stops over here. Oh, now this is here. All right, so build on the conversation and tactic. How many masters studies what they did, and go on that conversation and tactic. That sounds.
Yeah, I think this is okay. You guys want to make sure we're on it for this next session. You're down. Yeah, because our.
Probably that like saying, you know, Bill here. Designed to make the law that people have to live up to the. Says is like. He's just agree.
And then should you want to get rid of that second one then? Sure. That was genius. Genius was a genius. Okay, 2 minutes and we'll go back. All right, my friends, let's hold it together. And we're gonna try to do several things in the last 20 minutes. So, the first thing we're gonna try to do, if I can get your attention. Raise your hand if you can hear me talking. Raise your hand if you can hear me talking. Exactly. All right. Sorry to interrupt the conversations, just want to make sure we get you out on time. We're gonna try to do is hear from each table briefly, but be listening to the common ground that's starting to develop, if you hear it, about what it would take to make solutions work. That's what we're gonna try to do, and then we'll collect those of you that will kind of be the scribes. I hope everybody thanked their scribes. We'll collect these are beginning to be the common grounds for moving forward. So let's start over here. Chris, can you give us a summary? What it will take to make this work?
Our two tables thought we should have a mixed use component, which could include industrial and some commercials that is appropriately scaled for the number of units going in any given company. Not putting the cart in front of the horse. We had a strong suggestion that since trailers are kind of inherently affordable and might not need to be subsidized, that there could be a section of Brown Ranch, which could be a trailer park. There was a lot of support for doing a sort of phase one proof of concept, possibly tied into the existing infrastructure overlook, so as to save some costs and challenges. Something that's under that 800 EQR, so we didn't need to build a new water plant just to take it for a test drive. And ideally, something like that would have a mix of product types that would appeal to different people, kind of test the waters to see what the actual demand looks like and what people would want. Mostly support for a market rate component. The concern there was that it shouldn't be 90% market rate, 10% affordable, which is a reasonable concern. And then I think the thing that people want to understand is a lot of the infrastructure costs, how those would burden the city, and particularly US 40, which could be viewed as a regional thing that CDOT has to deal with versus a local problem that Steamboat would have to pay for.
Awesome, thank you, group one. Group two, let us know if there's anything on that list you also have, we'll check it and then add what else you missed.
No, we have things that, obviously they're all related to it. We have, full spectrum of income, which kind of, where you're running them, this. Open space, we talked about a lot, various types of open space being important. We had several on the list. Even an ag component was, discussed. Prioritizing locals, we discussed quite a bit and making sure that that would somehow fit into what we've gone with the local. And some kind of traffic and transportation system or solution.
Include that.
We got to talk about as well. It's kind of a presumption almost. Oh, and the grocery commercial. Was talked.
The mixed use or the mixed use, yeah.
Which wasn't really mixed. It's kind of mixed use, but just making sure we have those services. And then we kind of relieve some of the traffic.
Awesome. Thank you. Group three, let us know if things are on your list there, we'll check them and what's missing.
We agree with mixed zoning, and it was brought up to design with a town center in mind, so that people feel like they can be in that space and not necessarily have to come downtown. And then we also agree with finding some kind of solution to traffic, and we wrote down alternative and public transportation, so having a forest trail extension, but also figuring out bus service, in West Steamboat. And then, we also would like to see a feasibility study for the area. That climate resilience and disaster mitigation are built into the design of the neighborhood. which could also include code. We'd like to see various housing types and with that kind of this diverse, unique financing solutions, which we talked a lot about. Grants and AMI and deed restrictions and what all that might mean, buying down interest rates. Is that everything? Yeah, I guess that's everything. Oh, and also we just whispered about it, but we agree like having, hopefully we all. Say if you don't, but like proving that you work in Routt County.
Awesome, thank you.
Well, we will, as they will discuss the desire to understand infrastructure costs better in the same way that table discussed. We also discussed that this table feels that there must be some community successes in affordable housing, specifically through YBHA, for trust to be rebuilt in that. We also discussed the phased and flexible design and approach, so developing in phases. Must serve a range of incomes and then have a responsibility to the taxpayers, the financial sustainability, as taxpayer dollars.
It's 14. Last one, okay. I'll quickly hit the ones that already was touched on, open space, live transportation, transparency and communication, community shop center, town center, that kind of thing. Some of the unique ones we had were two of them on the financial side, one of which is responsible spending of taxpayer funds. So that it's a, we're not building granite, granite countertop, halls. And that it service a full spectrum, basically that statement, the full spectrum across the AMI levels. And doing that by having a variety of inventory all the way from studio apartments to 4-bedroom houses, so that you can be on that ladder. We had quite a discussion on the being employed as in the Yampa Valley. The point was brought up about, what does it mean to work in the Yampa Valley? Do you have to have W-2? Do you have to have been here X number of years? If you retired and you worked here for 20 years, do you qualify? So defining work, not necessarily workforce housing, but what it means to be part of the community versus just having a W-2. Gotcha. That's okay. Did I miss anything? Fitting in with the existing inventory. We also talked about free. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, yeah, what does it mean to have a free market?
Free portion is how does your body feel looking at that list of things that were agreed on at this table?
That was my thought.
Yeah, does it cause you stress? Does it make you excited? Let me own something.
I feel better seeing this.
Yeah.
The only thing I might add that nobody brought up is the possibility of a rec center that is ignored. Stuff that would draw people from Steamboat out there.
It's under a broader umbrella, but let's name it things like the rec center. And I just own something for a moment, watching you come up with those lists. And what I want to own is before we broke for dinner, I feel like I was driving you into a cul-de-sac and you guys were pushing back.
Yes.
Really so. I want to apologize for that and own it. What I felt I was doing is I had the weight of the hundreds of conversations we've had in the community about the sense of urgency to move forward. And you properly pushed back and said, no, the way you're asking this question is the wrong question. So thank you for being smarter than me. Thank you for doing that work, which is what I meant by don't do nothing. Create ways this can work. And that list, the reason I say my body is feeling better about it, I got a note from my watch I didn't even know I had. It said relax reminder, stress levels high. So my body feels more relaxed watching you all say, we can figure out a way to make this work. I just apologize for the feeling you were being forced down a track you didn't want to go. So I now know that's not a risk. You're not going to go anywhere that you guys don't feel is viable. But I hope that you got the message that I screwed up saying, which is your community wants you to keep going on this direction to solve this stuff, to make sure that the urgency is there. Thank you.
I feel often that there's a lot of time spent by all of you on the process outlines, but you should allow us way more time to flush out our ideas and what we're doing. Putting that scope on us is not productive.
Well, everybody seems to, I was commenting that a lot of the ideas, it's a common theme.
Yeah.
Everybody is really more in agreement than it felt earlier on.
So I think with that, Maureen, I think we can do a lot of things to make more spaciousness for Solomon's.
Most of this stuff is common sense, and I think it's easy to agree with. And if I can make just a political pitch here, the city council is currently, unfortunately, somewhat quietly, not that they mean to, pursuing alternatives, additional tools to be used in this community that are currently being used in other communities. They've got a good staff that is presenting ideas to them. These are kind of new ideas to a city council who have no background in this stuff. One of them got very frustrated at this last meeting and said, we don't know what we're doing. Help us with this. They need support. Without going into details as to what these things are, it is not real estate development. It is other tools to help this community forward in mitigating our affordable housing problem. Pay attention, and please, to the degree that you can, support it.
Well, wait a minute, what are you talking about?
They didn't know what it is.
Next meeting.
I'm not gonna take up.
Okay, sorry, but fair enough.
We'll have a side meeting.
We'll bring that forward, we
can-
the information necessary and
Yep.
put it in.
Fold into the mix, yeah, hit it.
In the first meeting, I think I said something like, I would, in our small group at the end, I would like to see tools used by our communities to mitigate the very strong external forces of our free market that are causing a lot of this problem. Like, it's always gonna be pushing down on the Yampa Valley. And so if we allow, I'm the believer that if we allow free market to continue what it's doing on the real estate side, bye-bye, not everything we like out here. I already see it. I go to, Alpine Mountain Ranch and, all these very expensive homeowners who have the time to talk to me about wildfire mitigation. Do you think I go to Sleepy Bear? Do you think I go to like West Acres to talk to them about wildfire? No, I see it every day. Who this town is starting to serve. So if we have tools like that, it has to come from the county and locally, because the free market's not gonna do it. So I appreciate whatever these tools might be, these financing options for people to get into stable housing. I appreciate you saying that today, because that was something I brought up in the first meeting, and it's really great to see that. That's awesome. Awesome.
Yeah, sure.
I just wanted to share maybe the different perspective than what you was describing, because in our last process, before we break, we were at minimum at least honing in on a problem. We were honing in on a question or a problem we're aiming to solve. That gets me closer to confidence. When we go through this process, I can feel my anxiety go to the proof. Because what we've done here, we've all been through. We got to throw our thing in. We got our community center, rec center, and now we've got things of affordable housing, and we've got free market, we've got all these things. And all I see there is the exact process that the housing authority and every other developer previous to that has gone through, where they do 1,000 community meetings, and they hear all the things people want. And by the time they're done with the project, they have a behemoth that is completely unfinancially solvent, which no way the community is gonna pass it, and everybody's looking around wondering how we got here by adding to the list ad nauseum until we ended up with this. So my anxiety now infinitely higher than it was when we were at least aiming towards the problem. Mine's there.
All right, point very well taken, and I don't even mind that you took away my Apple phone intro. So but the design for August really is to be at the peak of the open process, which is exactly this. What's the widest range of agreement before we can say, okay, what of these is feasible, what has to be part of it? So it is on target, but I think your challenge is gonna be helpful to say, it's not enough to say all the things we want, but they have to fit together in a feasible way.
Can I offer a specific question too? One thing for us to think about that was, it's hard to keep track of all the kind of ways we've tried to explore this problem, but within the idea of sort of Brown Ranch being a puzzle within a puzzle, we talked about how like a lot of these things that we want and need have a lot to do with how West Steamboat changes over time. So one thing is to say, I hear where you're coming from, first of all, that makes sense. And also thinking, sometimes having people can know, if people are like, look, if that area is gonna change. I guess what I'm saying is not all that necessarily has to be a part of whatever this project ends up being. But instead it's saying like, if that area is gonna change, if we're going to do these things, let's also look at maybe being able to do these other parts as we grow. So I'm not trying to solve your anxiety as much as saying, it probably is important for us to look at a list like this and say, yeah, we'd like to accomplish a lot of those things on Brown Ranch, and also maybe some of them are adjacent to or part of West Steamboat, because some of them are like rec center as an example. A great thing to have, sounds like, I don't know what your needs are, but maybe or maybe not, it's part of, you know, the fundamentals of a Brown Ranch project. So just trying to say like, there's ways to look at it where we say like, yeah, a lot of the stuff we need, but to Bill's point, we want to hone down and make sure it's balancing the question of affordability and feasibility.
You're asking us a very direct question. Yes or no on Brown Ranch? My direct response is, what question are we trying to solve? And are we aiming in that direction every time we open our mouths? Every time we add to the equation, is that the solution we're putting forward? Or are we just piling on the same process we've done? So we've been around a long time. How many times have we circled this piece of land with a new development?
Fair chunk. Richard?
I think Kelly brought up, we should do a feasibility study. I think get a feasibility study, it will help us solve some of your questions, or some of all the questions. So I think that should be a component of what we're moving forward with.
Yeah, it's true. It is, I don't have deep understanding of it, but it's a feasibility of, you have to have some parameters of what you're studying. So I think those are the attempts to get that narrow. And what's the tightest agreement of parameters we can go for? So, message heard. So, all right, so. Got one more.
I have a question. We're all making the assumption that this, in order for Brown Ranch to be developed, it has to be a part of the city of Steamboat Springs. Have we looked into whether or not it could just be in the county, Steamboat 2 and Silversburg? And, you know, is there a source of way they could get water without being part of Steamboat?
I'm sure there's probably an answer to that, but if there's not, we'll chase it down and bring it into the next safe session. Yes, Michael, last question.
They have a metro district, which is not an available option anymore. They buy water from the city on an outer district service, and I don't think the city is willing to entertain such things.
Okay, so it might be no.
All right, so we promised you this kind of, you know, at the end of phase one, we would ask you, is there a reason to go forward? As Clark has been doing, I think doing a great job, is that we want to take the off ramp from this conversation. And as we talked about, well, the next slide will ask, it's an off ramp for work reveals there's just not a viable path forward. We've just got kind of insurmountable, it's not an up or down vote on Brown Ranch, it's not a replacement for decision, it's just this question.
That's
not what you want to have happen when you hit that slide. This question. This is the off-ramp question. There are substantial roadblocks to Brown Ranch. I can move my zoom out of the way. That mean we should take the off-ramp and not move on to phase two. We've learned enough. This is just insurmountable and we should take that off-ramp. Is that a thumbs up? Oh, yeah, there's, insurmountable roadblocks, that should read. I think that's right. There are insurmountable roadblocks, sorry, instead of substantial. Probably let me change it. There are insurmountable roadblocks to development in Brown Ranch. So same thing with the QR code.
Okay, how do we know there's substantial roadblocks if we don't do a feasibility study on the land?
Yeah, so this is just your, I'm gonna give you a check.
It's what you know as of today.
Yeah.
I know there's more to learn, but that's sort of why, you know, that's why we're doing the temperature check.
Phase two?
What do we know?
Phase two. Correct.
Well, we've looked into some of those things that we do know are concerns. You know, we had the couple different inquiry teams specific to this, and I think there's a plan we wanted to get after this meeting to get specifically into some of the other things that are like real questions around feasibility. So we're beginning to do is, not the beginning, we've been working on it, but no, we don't have all the answers today.
I thought there was like a month ago or 2 months ago now, I'm not exactly sure, I thought there was, oh yeah, we need to do a feasibility study and it's gonna be the DST committee that does that, and they can't really do that, so let's have someone do it. I thought that was kind of. No,
I'm not sure.
Yeah. But this is just in your estimation, like you've learned enough, we should stop this, or if this isn't supported, the presumption is we should keep going, that there's more that we need to learn, so we just want to do temperature check today.
What is the suggestions?
Yeah.
We lose the we. We're asking every
Oh, individual, yeah.
Every individual
That's
in
great.
the room to answer that question for
The
yourself.
question is, does thumbs up mean we want the off ramp, or does it mean we wanna go forward?
You'd vote no. We do, we should not take the off ramp, let's keep going if you want to. keep going.
But in this one, I'm saying it thumbs down means like, don't take the.
Thumbs down is a yes on continuing with this.
Right.
If you want to keep moving forward, you'd be thumbs down on this. Yeah, so thumbs up, we've been doing the kind of informal voting, thumbs up, yeah, we should call this quits, there's no way this is gonna work. I don't know, I have a lot of concerns about it, and thumbs up, no way, there's still too much more to do, we don't know enough, there's still viable options, that's the.
Or there is, I know of such a substantial, insurmountable roadblock that in my mind, there is no viability here.
That's in front of us up.
I'm trying to get the. Hey, stay on the highway.
Yeah, stay on the highway.
Chris wants to know.
Yeah, and comes this side, you stay on the highway, but with some like, make sure the sun things out.
Yeah.
Neutral?
Yeah, it's kind of neutral, just notice the side side. Insurmountable roadblocks. All right.
We'll be getting to. Okay, are we?
This is just this is a temperature check for next time.
Yeah, this isn't like, we're just doing a temperature check here, this is sort of just see where we are. Yeah, go ahead. It's been called.
Thumbs down, okay.
I thought he was.
Like that annoying whole
No votes for the off ramp on that one. No votes for the off ramp on that one. Next question. Because our current strategies are insufficient to meet the housing need, we need to continue exploring housing solutions in downtown. Just, because of our current strategies are insufficient, we should keep exploring. Slightly different phrasing of it.
It has to be the same question.
Yeah, different. Get a couple more votes on that one.
Wait, question.
All right, last, we'll close, these are just helping us plan for the. The thumbs up, thumbs the side.
Sorry.
Yeah.
You need to continue exploring housing.
Yeah.
Thumbs up.
Yep. Exactly.
Thumbs up. So yeah,
Yep.
you're keeping going.
Correct. Yeah, it's just changing it more floats coming in at the top. Yeah. Okay. So this is a good kind of temperature check. And this is Charlie, to your point, this is kind of giving us a little bit of that information. And then the last question, just as folks are finishing that up, we are 7:05 afterwards. So we'll take the kind of emerging shared agreements on what solutions are going to be required, what it needs to look at. We'll take Charlie's wise advice that we need to start moving towards, okay, how do we narrow those, make sure that they're feasible? We've heard the calls for feasibility going forward. And when we meet again next time, we're going to kind of try to bring that back as a package to say, okay, the community has said, please solve this challenge. We think all of the above are needed. You've said, whoa, 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 it's gotta be the right version of these things. You've started to articulate what those are, and we'll kind of come back and give you that time for dialogue in the August meeting to see what else is missing. Oh, the August meeting is August 26th.
But if people say they don't wanna do it, why should we have another meeting?
And nobody said take the off ramp on the first.
Yeah, this is far right. We've got 75% people.
Yeah.
Keep going.
Oh, I don't know, Brad, do we have a location for the?
Probably here. Probably here.
Probably here. Yeah.
That's a great question.
All right, no, just those three questions?
How do we get back
What's that?
How do you get back to the prior one? I was not able to vote on it, and it's not linked to this one.
Oh, it's something, yeah, so, we can add your data to it, Bill, if you want, afterwards, I don't think you can go, I don't think we can open it.
Oh, so we didn't vote fast enough, we don't get.
Yeah, the polls closed.
It's a temperature check. It's not like a.
Okay,
Get to the file.
no, this is
Yeah.
just giving us some words of,
What we want is, because we know next meeting is our final meeting of phase one.
Boy, that
We wanted to get a sense of where you guys were before we entered into that meeting to sort of see like, you know, what ground have we covered? Has the group sort of moved a little bit, and then what movement do we need to have? And so I think we've gained a lot, both from these questions and also just the conversations we've had.
yeah, just,
It's really, you guys, you know, cover a lot of territory tonight. There's some really, really good commentary at the tables that I got to listen to. I was impressed with, especially hearing people who didn't agree with each other have, I think, pretty productive debate sometimes. That was moving you guys in a place where I think, you know, it's not like everything got figured out, but it was nice to see you guys do that. It's great.
appreciate the hard work. So just quickly, next steps, we'll, as we've been doing, compile these notes, send them back out to you along with the video. I don't know if there's an inquiry team that was automatically conjured up, but we'll create new ones if we need to help answer the questions you're raising. We have a community workshop tomorrow night. We've got the flyer. Please encourage folks to go. These community conversations are critical.
It's gonna focus on the question many of you were asking of like, who it's Brown Ranch for who, or housing for who, I think. It's sort of exploring the question of like, how do you meet different needs and what are the needs?
And then
And
again,
that's at the community center at 5:30 PM.
and then final, as always, welcome your feedback tonight. Feel like, you guys gave me a lesson in learning to listen to your wisdom. Appreciate that. Anything else you'd want us to have? And hopefully, this direction that you started to go is where can we find common ground? How can we make solutions work on behalf of the community? We'll continue that. Thank you all so much. If you wouldn't mind just finishing out that feedback for how can we improve what we're doing and better serve you guys as being DSC.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everyone. Hard work tonight. Nice job.
You ever looked at library hall? Is he? Okay, that's just gonna touch, because it's a great, I would be happy to have you. Bus.
So are you ready?
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks, Brad. Yeah. Thank you. Okay, yeah, I think that's fine. But I can't wait to have time for beer and. Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, you don't carry those by yourself. Yeah, all of it, right? Yeah, and it's all, yeah, okay. So, that was. But It's inhibited by. Everybody has to. I'm actually at real with taking from others that have grown it through. It's so true, it's not. Yeah. Good. Oh, awesome, that's great. I've got to get our little pictures here. Yes. Yep. Don't sue you. Try to make it just one time next time. Bill, how are you? Are you taking photos of the photos of those? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Let's get. You have photos of your. Yeah, I got. We can turn that on.
And then they also. This is it, what you can say with the face is that.
Is this your?
Yeah.
So I unplugged things from that. Would you rather they stay plugged into it?
No.
Yeah.
He's ready, fantastic.
Where's the case for this? There it is.
Yeah. This guy.
I know how to put a tripod down with a.
Yeah,
Like
this guy.
Bill, do you like this guy in here?
Oh, he goes in a little box, yeah, so.
And how about I put the little Dealy hopper and.
Yeah. Yeah, HDMI and.
Yeah,
power.
kind of just let-
Okay, so the HDMI power for the key feed. Cool.
Yeah.
We do recycle, we're not gonna use them again.
You guys make credit for these? The table.
I think not.
The World Cafe.
But you wrote them up, we should get them.
Yeah, because I didn't, I don't capture every.
And those are actually, some of them are some pretty good visual.
Right.